What's up, bros? Welcome to another Brograph Broadcast. I'm Dave.
And I'm Matt.
Yo, guys, I am Dave.
All right, on the show, we've got joining us today the amazing, the awesome, the locked and loaded David Brodeur.
And Brograph is a supplement to our site, Brograph.com, which is a motion graphics tutorial site with tutorials, plugins, podcasts, and other MoGraph stuff. And on this podcast, we talk about everything ranging from motion graphics to Cinema 4D, After Effects, plugins, render engines, doing business, doing taxes, being a contractor, or working for the man. And if you have listener emails you'd like to send us, it's a listener-driven show. You can send your questions or topic ideas to Brograph at Brograph.com. We'd love to hear from you. Doesn't matter if it's noob or advanced. We love to talk about everything. So there you go. What's up, David?
That was pretty quick. You went through that pretty quickly.
Yeah, I'm pretty good at it now.
So on the show, we've got Mr. David Brodeur. He's already in Chicago waiting for half res because he's getting out of the path of the Hurricane Ermagerd.
Trying to avoid it, you know. Here in a high rise is where I want to be, in the Midwest.
Yeah.
Battling
pretty
that
good up there, right?
Man. Oh, it's perfect. It's exactly what you want it to be. I think it's like, 65, 70, somewhere in there.
Nice. Got any Chicago pizza yet?
No, it's on the list, though. It's on the list.
Okay.
I've had a couple things that I've wanted, but that's up next.
Got to get a hot dog and some deep dish. I was looking back at my pictures from like a couple of years, or last half res.
Yeah.
And oh my gosh, like just one slice of that pizza is enough for like
Dude,
a
it's
month.
one bite, and you're just like, oh god, I'm dying.
It's the lasagna
So
of pizza.
thick.
And I grew up in Philly,
pizza.
and I'm used to like having multiple slices. I used to have pizza every night. I moved here, and I'm like, I can have deep dish pizza once every 6 months.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
But it's fantastic.
Man. Well, we're glad you're safe. We almost didn't have you on the show because we didn't know if we were going to work this out with the evacuation and all. But, some people are calling this the end of the world because there's been so many, crazy hurricanes and disasters and stuff going on. But, there's a really fun fact. And I never realized this until I was recently doing some research. But nobody has ever actually accurately predicted the end of the world.
It's true. True.
Well, technically correct, yes. That is technically correct.
Yes.
Well, that's not necessarily true. Someone may have the exact date. It could just be far, far in the future.
It's in the future.
Like, who
we don't
knows?
know
Like
yet.
We got a time travel.
The Doctor Who episode, like one of the first or second, the second episode where they go into the future and they see like the explosion of the sun and everything like that. That may actually be true. You just don't know it yet because we have not reached that point.
So far it hasn't been predicted.
Then I'm wondering, if it does happen, will there be anyone around to say that it happened and it was recorded and accurate?
That's true.
Tree falls in the forest type situation.
Right. Just a bunch of dinosaurs because it's all cyclical, right?
Yeah.
Exactly.
It just starts over. So David, you are locked and loading. You're lockedandloading.com.
Tell us about yourself, because
and you're in the college.
Yes.
Oh,
and
okay.
everything you do.
Yes.
Okay. Well,
let's do this.
I went to college at Ringwing College of Art and Design, and kind of like you guys, and I'm sure like a lot of people around our age and around the decade that we all went to college, there was no such thing as motion graphics or motion design. There was no major for that. So I went to college for graphic design and got my all my basis of
another one of you people.
Yeah.
Another one of you.
It's the
all
same
the
old
good
story.
ones are graphic designers. See if anyone. Here's what I'm telling you: if you're listening to this show and you want to get into this, go into graphic design and then move into motion design because those are the best ones. All the best ones are graphic designers.
But then learn a little film theory after that, though, because you got to know how the camera works.
So I agree with both of you, but I also disagree, because now there's something called motion design, and there's actually majors built around design, which is the graphic design fundamentals that we all love, and film theory. And when you merge those two, we have motion design, right? And so now they actually have that. They're spoiled. They actually have the major that does that. So anyway, though, I went for graphic design, and I did love it, but there came a point where I hated it. and
don't we all hit that point?
Yeah, and we were doing like multiple page typography layouts, not like the fun stuff where you get to do nice headers and fun stuff. It's like, no, what are M dashes and N dashes, and it was like all this stuff for hundreds and hundreds of words. And I remember one of my teachers, she was actually the department head at that time, came up to me and said, "Do you think this is the major for you?" And I'm like, "Not if I'm going to be doing this. I don't want to do this forever. I don't want to do multiple page layouts for like hundreds of like words." And she was blown back. But through that, we worked through it, and I started getting into film a lot, and I started merging my graphic design with film. And then just naturally it came up. I said, hey, I want to start merging my graphic design with the moving footage I'm doing, and then that seamlessly integrated into After Effects. And then I got to a point in After Effects, and this is all in college still. So no one did animation. There's no one teaching animation. I had no support, and then I started doing that thing where you layer things back, one pixel back, multiples of them to make something in 3D in After Effects at that time. And then I was like, I've got to get into 3D. And so I started looking into it, and I was looking at Maya, and I was looking at Cinema 4D, and I picked up Cinema 4D and just started teaching myself it. And then by the time I graduated, I knew that I wanted to do animation and 3D graphics, and that's what I built my portfolio out of. I made my own motion reel. I was like the only designer from the department that actually had a motion reel and doing 3D animation, and I just went for that. But
So how long have you been doing this for?
Well, I graduated in 2010, so in the industry for 7 years.
Youngin'.
Yeah.
You freaking youngin'.
Yeah. But I make it like very weighted that it's not about the years, it's more about the time that you put in and that work ethic that you have. And I told I'm actually a teacher now at my alma mater. I teach 3D animation there, and I tell my students this all the time. I'm like, guys, it's all about time put in. I'm a firm believer of the 10,000 hour rule, although I believe it's much more than 10,000 hours. It's you've got to live, eat, sleep, breathe this stuff, and not to the point where you burn yourself out. Make yourself like love it and enjoy it, but you got to work hard. I mean, you really do. We know this. The technology changes constantly, and everyone's learning stuff. I mean, while you're sleeping, someone else is learning it. And like, don't burn yourself out, but like keep doing it. And I pride myself in that. Since I graduated, I did that. Some of it inadvertently because I owed almost $200,000 in debt. But
oh gosh,
jeez.
Yeah, trust me. Tell me about it.
You could have become a doctor, dude.
I could have, but I wouldn't be happy, and I'm happy.
There you go.
And so I would work multiple jobs. I'd go to my full-time job, and I'd get home at 8 o'clock, and I'd do my freelance work until 8 p.m. till 3 a.m., get up and do it all over again. And I just did this, and I realized I could do it for about 4 to 5 months without just being kind of like completely burnt out. And when you're 22 or whatever, I mean, you could do that, and you're excited to do anything, and so I did it, and it just kind of formed into this habit now where, I mean, I don't do that. I can't do that anymore. But this habit of just never stop creating, and that's really what I push. Is like, you know what? I mean, right now as we speak, I'm doing tutorials for Grayscale Gorilla. I'm working full time teaching 3D animation at Ringwing. I have a big freelance job for a humongous client. I'm doing my weekly Instagram animations. I'm hopping on here with the podcast with you guys. I'm going to conferences all over the place, right? And I'm not burnt out. I'm happy. I'm excited. And I think that's the energy you have to have if you want to make it in this industry, is never stop creating, never stop pushing to be better. So I don't know.
Totally agree.
That's where I'm at. It started from graphic design, ended up here, but my number one thing is passion. Be passionate about what you do. And I think that's my background. My background is being passionate about whatever I do. And only do that.
That's the show, basically. That's all the advice you need, right?
Well, we had a great time, guys.
We're out.
Yep, I'll see you guys in a couple days.
So, what classes primarily are you teaching there right now?
So, this is my 4th year teaching there, which is crazy to me.
Wow.
But the classes I'm teaching this year are right now I'm teaching advanced 3D animation to juniors, and then next semester I teach 3D animation, intro to 3D animation, pretty much to sophomores, second semester.
Cool.
Yeah, so
we
really
met one
fun.
of your students recently too.
Yes,
Yeah,
we
you
did.
guys got to work with Maddie down at ABC.
Yeah, that was
right?
fun. Yeah.
Yeah, I still need to send her the T-shirt. I completely forgot. If you're listening, I got your info.
I'm sure she's anxiously
sending it.
waiting.
Yes.
Yeah, sorry.
Okay, so I don't know much about Ringling. Is it? It's a 4-year school.
Yep.
Okay, so full bachelor's degree. I didn't know if it was like a trade school, like the Art Institute. That's where I went, and it's not good.
Meh.
Yeah, no, it's interesting. Ringling is really up there, especially about how people know about it. I remember I graduated in the first year. I was working with some people from LA, and they met me, and they're like, "Oh, dude, you're from Ringling? I've always wanted to meet someone who graduated from Ringling." And I was like, "What, really?" And so Ringling's really known for the computer animation department, and that's been it's number one thing for years. It's I mean, Pixar and Lucasfilms and Sony Image Picture Works and yada yada. They've all hired people directly from there for years, recruited directly from Ringling, and that's been kind of like our name. But now that motion design's come in, we're kind of taking over as well. But Ringling's up there. You know, people that know colleges know that it's Ringling and SCAD and RISD, and these are the big colleges, that have this backing to them and kind of that longevity and stuff. So, yeah.
And I'm blanking on his name. Holy cow, he just wrote the book.
Yes, Joey Corman.
Joey Corman. Jeez, I love you, Joey. It's been a long day. Is he's not still there, right? He's just he was working there, correct?
It's funny, yeah. I semi-replaced Joey.
Okay.
Joey threw something out online somewhere, and I contacted him, and he was like, "Oh, dude, you'd be perfect for this position at Ringling or whatever." And it hit me just at the right point where I was like, I'm ready for like some sort of change here. And so I kind of was his replacement, so to speak. So yeah, Joey and I only live like 40 minutes away from each other. Sad to say that, and I've been meaning to. I've just been so busy. I'm like, I got to hit this guy up to have lunch with, and I've just too busy. It's
I would pick
on my
that
list.
guy's brain.
I know.
Hours.
I know.
Have you read his book yet?
I have not.
I'm a big pusher of his book.
I know. I've heard nothing but great things. So
yeah,
and I've actually supported it, and I haven't even read it. But yeah, anything industry, I always say support people in the industry, no matter what. So I will definitely be buying it. I wish it was on audiobook, but I'll definitely be buying it.
You know what? Everyone's saying that they want to hear it,
thing.
and he's got those beautiful pipes.
Well, he's a voice actor too. You know that,
I know.
right?
So we should
do
just
an audiobook.
Man, I'll hit him up on
sure.
Facebook. I'll be like, dude, everyone's asking for an audiobook. When are we going to get an audiobook version?
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah. So Half Res is going to be coming up this week, and we wanted to say, because you're obviously there already, we're going to head up there within a couple days.
Yeah, we'll be up there Tuesday. And
A little bummed EJ had a last minute thing. He can't make it. Sucks. But Barton Damer is actually going to replace him in his room that we had at the Airbnb.
There you go.
But we have quite a room list. It's us, Sage from the Cinema 4D subreddit, David Aryev,
and Schmoopy.
and Barton, and Schmoopy, of course.
Wherever David goes, Schmoopy goes.
Yeah. And then there are so many listeners and friends and other people coming, and we're going to hang out, and we've been talking to people on Twitter. Joey, I think there's a pregame thing going on, like beforehand, a School of Motion thing going on that somebody was talking about on Twitter or something. I don't know all the information yet. Like, there's all this information coming in about what are we going to do before we go to the show. So everybody just kind of get up on Twitter and talk, and we're going to make this
everyone
happen.
get up on Twitter and just listen, because we're going to call out a place that we're hanging out. We're going to find the place. We're going to start hanging out, and we're going to be like, yo, get here, peeps.
And we're
Come hang
probably
out.
going to find where like School of Motion is, and then tell everybody else to go there. That's probably the plan.
And then
Nice.
this will be like quarter res, where everyone
res.
with
Wait,
no
so
speeches.
Joey's coming? Joey's coming to half res?
I have no idea. I heard
Well,
someone,
yeah.
Liam 531 was telling us that some of the School of Motion guys are going to be up there. I don't know if that's Joey.
assuming
I think
it's him.
I talked to Joey about SIGGRAPH or something, and he said he didn't think he was going to go to any for the rest of the year. But I don't really know.
Okay.
I could be.
Well,
just
he's not in
lying.
Florida right now, I hope so.
I would hope.
Yeah. I mean, might as well go to Chicago, right?
Yeah,
Right?
that's what I'm
That's what all
saying.
the cool kids are doing anyway.
Yeah.
So, and I was also gonna. Okay, this is an interesting little thing. First of all, do you watch Rick and Morty?
I don't. It's on my list.
Oh,
Ever
we
since
can't
I
be
heard you guys
friends.
talking
Sorry.
about it,
It's
I
over.
want to so bad. I need to. I promise I will soon.
You know, I was reading something on I was like reading Ask Reddit or something the other day, and it's like it was one of the question was, what are you really ashamed to admit that you really like? And someone was on there saying, I really like Rick and Morty, but geez, I hate the fandom. And so like
funny.
I became a little embarrassed like about the whole how excited I am about
We were
Rick and
talking
Morty.
about it before it was cool.
But I'm gonna
talk
say-
about it.
Yeah. You know what? I couldn't disagree more. I think there's no shame in liking Rick and Morty, and I can't wait to jump on and enjoy Rick and Morty.
Dude, it's the best. And that people have been sending us so many Pickle Rick memes. It's
I've seen them.
ridiculous.
They're blowing up.
Even
Hey,
even somebody.
are you gonna print off some Pickle Ricks?
Well, I printed your Pickle Rick a long time ago, and I just haven't given it to you.
I know. Well, you should print off like 4 Pickle Ricks,
But I gotta
and give them
paint
away.
That's the problem.
Who cares?
It's
Let
a
other
long
people
process.
paint them.
It takes me like an hour and a half to paint a Pickle Rick.
Right.
But
How'd your My Little Ponies turn out?
yeah, I did the My Little Ponies with my daughter. We've been printing furniture for her dollhouse today as well. I just got another set of drawers with separate drawers that you can put in and out, you know.
That's funny.
Yeah, but the Pickle Rick, people send Pickle Rick stuff. Somebody on Instagram, it's just hilarious what everybody's sending. And somebody sent something the other day, they're like, this Pickle Rick looks like a dildo. I'm like, isn't any pickle kind of?
Yeah, I mean, I guess you could
But-
go there.
But I was like, okay. It's funny. Thanks for sending it. It's funny. But the Pickle Rick stuff to me now is like becoming like the wine memes where it's just like, all right, Pickle Rick. Yeah.
I send Dave wine memes all the time because he hates them. So if you really want to piss Dave off in the way that Beeple's People does to me,
Yes.
send wine memes to Brograph at Brograph.com.
We will
Nice.
be doing a Beeple's People today, so don't worry.
Yeah,
Yeah, there we go.
Yeah, if I get a wild bug at some point, I am going to do that intro. I promise you.
Nah,
It's gonna be
I'll,
epic.
I'll do my ukulele. I think I'm
No,
going to do
please.
the ukulele with the hand claps and the whistling. Yeah, you know what? You don't like it, and now you know how it feels.
This is going to be epic.
This is what you sound like. So, dude, we're super excited to. Was just hanging out on Deadmau5's Twitch channel. The other day. First of all, he was showing off his wedding pictures, which it was actually really funny because it wasn't his wedding pictures, but it was like the wedding's assistant who takes the candid pictures of the shoot.
Okay.
You know, they're not like the real super professional photos. They're just the candids or whatever. I mean, they're still with a really nice camera, but he's showing off his wedding pics because he got that folder in as before Kelly even saw it.
Oh,
Which was
that's
like-
funny.
He's like, oh, she's gonna be pissed. But we were talking about hanging out with him again. He brought it up. He was showing off though the mini cube that he got
Yeah,
built.
the mini cube is so cool.
And so he's got it working now to where you can do Mercury playback engine from After Effects straight into the cube, so that you can just work straight in the cube, like
That
on
is
location.
super awesome.
Very
So he's
nice.
like, dude, you got to come back out. And he started showing off our Brograph designs on the cube on the live feed. I was like, dude.
Sweet.
So we may be doing a hang again pretty soon. So keep watching out for that. We'll probably do a live feed and all that other kind of stuff. So, and we can say that and we can talk about it because he was like straight up talking about
he told
it on
all
the
his
feed.
followers.
Yeah. So, and then I also wanted to say I thought this was kind of funny. Paul Robinson, one of our listeners, was showing off one of his Mabim Bam T-shirts.
Yeah. What is it?
The Shrimp Heaven Now.
Shrimp Heaven Now. Do you watch? Do you listen to My Brother and Me?
No,
David.
My references are out now. I'm totally on.
But
so
he went
get
to
on
the
your
show.
podcaster and start following My Brother and Me. It's an advice show and
for the modern era.
I'll take some notes here.
But the guy who did Hamilton, God, what's his name? Lin-Manuel Miranda.
Lin-Manuel Miranda.
He actually came up and did a song on stage with them about Shrimp Heaven Now live, and I think it's the one Paul was at. But the reason I bring up Paul in the first place is because I just saw he's got Facebook Eat Fresh Cake, and I thought I'd bring it up because he did our shirt. I'm sorry, Gayton did our shirt.
And Gayton did our shirt, but Gayton and Paul invited me on because they invited me on Facebook to follow that page, and it's got those designs on it. Oh, the Eat Fresh Cake?
Yes, they work together, so I'm always like, those guys are like,
they're like family.
Yeah, they're like family, and I think both of them are going to be at Half Res as well.
I've heard them say that, but that was when the Half Res stuff just came out, so I haven't heard anything. If they don't, I'm saying they're going to be there, so I'm putting it on them now. If they're not there,
they better be there.
Shame.
Because we're going to be wearing the Gayton DeSimone T-shirt, limited edition.
Quote
also,
unquote limited edition.
Yeah. And also another thing for the week wrap-up here is we got a link to the behind-the-scenes of the Marshawn Lynch video that we just finished helping with a little bit. Had already been chewed.
Yeah, they did a lot of the hard work. We did a lot of the easy work.
Time to hop in and take the credit. Let's do it.
Right.
Yeah, I know, right?
Matt, you did some of the comping.
I did quite a bit of comping, in smoke and explosions of rocks and stuff. I was basically in After Effects the whole time. And then Dave was doing a lot of X particle stuff with rock explosions and stuff. It was very fun. It was a very fun project to work on.
Oh yeah.
So we've been talking about all these projects we've been working on. Yeah, thanks. We've been so busy and talking about we've been so busy, and so here's actually some evidence that we actually have been working. So just throwing that out there. And before we go any further,
oh boy,
we're gonna take a little break here.
Are we?
Yeah, we're going to. We haven't even mentioned this yet. We got Jules Urbach on the show today as well.
Yes,
to talk about a couple things about Octane. Number one is the feature request system.
Mm-hmm.
That's number one. Number two is the whole render token thing to help us kind of wrap our brains around that.
Yeah, there's been so much information out there, but it's you gotta kind of pick and choose, and so it's cool. We have basically an hour-long sit-down with him talking about this the new render token stuff. Super excited for you guys to hear it. And by the way, so the big thing is the render token stuff is going to go on sale September 19th. That's when the big push for the render tokens
18th,
is.
19th, something like
19th,
that. I don't know. You'll hear it in the interview in a minute.
Yeah. Tuesday,
All right. So let's go to the interview and we'll be right back.
Okay, so a couple of weeks ago, Otoy announced, you guys might have heard, an upcoming service called Render Tokens. It's kind of a cryptocurrency / render platform. And so we were a little bit curious about it, and we had Jules on the show a few weeks ago, and so we invited him back to kind of talk about it. And so we're super excited to have Jules Urbach along with Kalin Stoyanchev. So most of us have heard of cryptocurrency like Bitcoin or even Dogecoin back in the day. Can you first kind of give us a rundown, maybe for the layman, what render tokens are and how it might be advantageous for us to use it in a workflow?
Sure. So I'm going to start by talking about how this affects Octane users, which is, I think, what a lot of listeners are going to want to hear about. So the thing about rendering remotely of any kind is that obviously it just means you invest less in GPUs, your deadlines can be handled faster, and we built that. I mean, Orc is essentially the interface to that, the service itself, us ultimately launching it to everyone in these $5 chunks that you can purchase is that service, right? And the only concern that I had with that kind of system was that we aren't necessarily making it as inexpensive as it could be. Part of that is because we have so many users and the render jobs are so large that we have to depend on centralized data centers like Amazon, for example. I mean, they're not the only part of Orc, but we have only a few different region types, and Amazon's one of them. So the cost of rendering on Amazon, even if we sort of pull all that together, hasn't really gone down since 2013. And secondly, there's a lot of our users alone. I mean, if you combine all those GPUs that are just sitting there at night, I mean, that actually has a lot more rendering power than what you have even today on Orc. And that's something that I was thinking about going back almost 10 years. Part of my idea for rendering, outside of your computer was to essentially leverage the fact that we would have enough users that we could distribute those jobs around. And then along that path, we did get Amazon, we did get data centers putting GPUs in the cloud, and that really helped. So from my perspective, the render token system is a parallel and similar augmented extension of what Orc does today. So in other words, you'll be able to buy render tokens that, I think this is all public now, so that'll be about 25 cents for a token, and at launch or at the at the first end of the first phase, it'll get you 256 Octane bench for 256 seconds. So those numbers are actually because of how cryptocurrency and the Ethereum network work. In order to deal with fulfilling a token, things need to be power of 2. But ultimately, that is roughly the same work that is handled by Orc. It's just in smaller chunks. And the idea is that when we have more and more GPUs on the network and the capacity goes up, we'll be able to do renders that are at a larger scale than Orc and ultimately cheaper, because we'll have many different parties bidding on fulfilling that service. So in April, when I was describing the future of Orc and I was talking about how we're going to have third parties that'll be able to bid on $5 render jobs. This is part of that. And tokenizing the system, putting it on the blockchain and having a cryptocurrency-backed unit of measuring rendering is very useful. It means that you can actually exchange render tokens between users. We can't do that, for example, with render credits on Orc. It's very hard. And it also allows us to to pay not just additional data centers that are similar to Amazon, but just about anybody on the network can essentially get these tokens themselves, and they can either use that for rendering, but it's also backed by Ethereum, which is a cryptocurrency that you can today exchange for dollars. And and so I think that from the perspective of making distributed or or sort of remote render jobs much cheaper, much more powerful, this is a very obvious improvement over an augmentation over what Orc's doing today. And I think that from that perspective, a lot of users could appreciate it. But there's a lot of secondary effects that are opened up by doing this on top of the blockchain. And I will talk a little bit about how Bitcoin works and how the value of that's derived. So I guess the history of Bitcoin started from there being a mathematical piece of work that a email system added to reduce spam, because there was a certain number of computing that was done that you could add to your email. It was called hash cache, and it meant that sending out spam wasn't free. There was a cost to that, and that formula was used by the guy that created Bitcoin as a means of actually creating a distributed system where anyone can essentially work on these proof of work, these computing cycles, and create a distributed ledger. And two things happen. One is you have a decentralized ledger that is validated by the entire internet if everyone's connected to it, and you have a permanent record that survives in a way that even the web doesn't. DNS domains can change and websites change, but this is a permanent record of every transaction that happens on the network. And similarly, at some point when there's enough people doing these transactions, value is created where just validating something that is just validating exchange allows you to peg that to a dollar value or a value of something equivalent to money. And so that's sort of how Bitcoin got started, and people do look at it as a way of being able to create commerce, in a purely decentralized way. There's no, credit card taxes. There's no app store taxes. There's no way to really, sort of get in the middle of it. And Ethereum is a newer version of that that came around, and it added one important layer that Bitcoin didn't have, and that is it includes proof of work. It includes code that you can essentially use as a contract to validate whether the exchange is doing something. And it's a little bit like writing JavaScript code. You can embed that into the into an Ethereum cryptocurrency exchange, and that means that you can build all sorts of other services, not just the exchange of value or validating transactions. You can create all sorts of other types of work on it. And in the in the last year or two, you've seen a lot of offshoots of Ethereum that are using that system to offer cryptocurrency versions of file storage. One of our advisors, Brendan Ike, who created Firefox, Mozilla, JavaScript, just launched a something called the Basic Attention Token. And inside of his browser, Brave, it has an ad blocker, it replaces all your ads, and it puts in other ads that are essentially paid for in cryptocurrency back to the advertisers. So there's a lot of economies that you can create just on top of Ethereum. And my plan for rendering was always to have this very decentralized transactional system built around rays of light. I mean, that's what Octane Bench is measuring. It's measuring for our users, what does this one GPU do when you combine multiple GPUs? The Octane Bench score actually increases linearly. So it's really a unit of energy for rendering. And as we showed back in 2013, you can scale that to 100 GPUs or 200, and it actually will render 200 times faster. And so we have, and that's essentially how we ended up pegging the value of an org job is really about Octane Bench per hour or minute. And that's something that everyone is able to really understand if they're coming from our layer. So the idea of render token is to base it on a certain amount of Octane Bench, which is really tied to the laws of physics in terms of computing light, and to allow that to be initially something that works side by side with the way that Orc does now. But there's a lot of other secondary value propositions for artists and creators on top of this system. And one of those is that if you essentially look at how LiveDB works, where you can create a material, you can publish it, share it with other Octane users, those are basically Orbex files, no different than the Orbex files that get generated when you export a scene from Cinema 4D, send it to Orc. Sometimes you do that behind the scenes, but everything is essentially packaged and distributed already. And you can make it so that assets that you create, that you want to publish for this system, can also have render tokens associated with them. And you can create rules, and this is where the smart contracts get really interesting. You can create rules where if you want to have it so that the asset that you built, it's reuse either once in a render, or maybe if it's used in every render, you can create little token exchanges of value. It's a really fascinating way of creating a marketplace around content and publishing. And then,
so these are hashed assets. So basically, is that right?
That is correct.
There's a unique hash for each one? Okay.
Yep. And the interesting is that we built all this already, because the way that Orc works, when you actually are sending a delta, when you basically say update the snapshot to the cloud, every single asset that would be put into an Orbex package and saved to your drive for standalone or for sending to Orc, we already have hashes of everything. And if Orc sees that hash exists already, it doesn't actually need to send the data over again. So it just essentially says, okay, we've got this stored already, let's just only send the differences. So the way the entire remote rendering system works is we've decoupled rendering from assets from a single host application. Cinema 4D works just as well as Blender or Unity or anything else. All the assets get converted into this into Alembic files, or into we've just added FBX. So we have hashes of every single part of the render job already, in the system for centralized rendering, and allowing that to be extended for decentralized rendering and for marketplaces where using that hashed value is something that flows tokens back and forth to the artist that's using it or the artist that created it. is super interesting, and it's something that I think is very valuable for a lot of artists that are currently putting things on TurboSquid or Evermotion or Patreon or have Patreon. So it's like this is definitely an alternative way of addressing a really great community of users that are already on Octane, and I think that I've never quite seen a system where the actual rendering itself can sort of touch all those points so cleanly across all these different post applications that Octane is integrated into.
That's very interesting. I really like the idea of like being able to like almost build one of your assets and then it's already uploaded, and so it seems to me like that would save a bunch of time as well, and render time and calculation time and stuff. So the more and more of these are being used, say everyone's using stuff from the LiveDB, it seems to me like you could knock out a render a lot faster as well.
Yeah, absolutely. So that is one of those points. Although people may not realize that when you're doing update scene snapshot, all of those LiveDB materials are already they're already on org. So even in that case, there's already that that sort of savings of uploading in time. But if LiveDB were to be extended towards anything that you could save in an OrbX package, and that will now include shaders, it'll include scenes, then you can really leverage that scale even better, and we can also let people build value on top of that. And there's a secondary offshoot of that, which ties back to the last time I was on here. I was describing how there is an entire ecosystem around AR that I think is going to be emerging pretty much now with things like ARKit. And I think that there's I think the blockchain and just storing transactions that are done even as renders, and that can include baking as well as just generating a light field. You can extract value from ads. So in other words, if every time that a render that you create through the distributed version of our rendering network is posted, just like with the basic attention tokens, where ad dollars could be attached to that, we can build that same thing after the render is done, and we can again exchange value and tokens back to the people that created it and contributed to it. So there's a lot of there's at least two ways that we're creating economies of value for the people creating work on the system that are on top of just pure let's pay for your time rendering a job for somebody else. And I think that leads towards a lot of fascinating ecosystems that are probably going to be valuable more so as AR sort of becomes more dominant, where the renders that you do with Octane will probably end up being more spatial, holographic, things that you can share and experience. And AR is this brand new Wild West ecosystem it reminds me a lot of the web, where it was kind of wild, where you could type something into a web browser in the 90s, and it would just show an entire portal of service. And the idea of apps that you downloaded or having something that was local, all of that went away. And so AR is something that doesn't fit perfectly nicely into the app model or even the web model. So having something where the work that you create on the blockchain, how it's linked to other assets and other layers that are presented through AR, triggered through real world locations or even launched from other parts of the of what's on that device is fascinating. And I think that's one of the reasons why a lot of cryptocurrency that's being sort of considered is all about how do we tap into the the VR and AR economies. And I think that what we've decided to do is, well, let's just go more fundamentally down to the level of the creator that's actually creating the light, that's bouncing around these, with the light maps or the light field render, or if it's just an image or a 360 video. All of those things have the same ability to sort of be monetized down the line.
And so these are all converted basically to one interchange format. Is that right? So you can use any application, and this also includes the Facebook, the new Facebook stuff that's coming out. Is that right?
That is correct. So one bit of news since the last podcast was that we did release the After Effects plugin.
Yes, I did see that. Yeah,
and part of why we did that was, and Nuke, and why there's a bundle with the subscriptions, which I'm still working on getting that to be called just Octane subscriptions. I think by October we'll be there. But one of those ideas was that a lot of people that are looking at volumetric video, which of course the Facebook camera is very much a part of that ecosystem, they want to leverage tools like After Effects and Nuke that are connected to this pipeline. And so a lot of our efforts with Facebook were around getting things like Nuke and After Effects and even Unity integration really working nicely, so that once we process that Facebook camera data, what you get back is an OrbX. It's essentially a scene file that you can then drop into After Effects or Nuke with Octane running and treat it as if it were a timeline asset. And so the interchange format is super valuable, and it does touch on more than what people sort of consider the traditional synthetic rendering pipeline. It's really useful for having photogrammetry target an OrbX file essentially as an interchange format, so you can take things from the real world, from the Facebook camera, from other similar cameras, and use them inside of any pipeline that Octane supports. And on the other side of that, you can also, when you're done with a render, we can also put it in an OrbX media package, which means that when you look at the output of that render, and this is going to start to become very useful even in the next iteration of Octane, where the actual renders that are being done inside of Octane can then be reused, fed into textures, and be modified with OSL. So for example, if you take all of the render passes, feed them back into an OSL texture in 308, you can do multi-light. And similarly, the idea is that you can take the output of a render, of what Octane's doing, and put it in an OrbX package and still do operations on it. And that's ultimately how a lot of the sort of the real-time playback stuff is going to work, because ultimately the ability to do more work once a render is completed and feed that back into the pipeline is where things like AR and VR can leverage what Octane can do beyond just rendering with a thin lens camera model.
So let me ask you this. Going back to what you just kind of mentioned, that kind of touched on something I wanted to ask about. So with the addition of, say, OSL, and in conjunction with the OrbX file and being able to throw it up to Orc, so will it be possible to maybe, say someone isn't a Octane user, they're a V-Ray user, an Arnold user, or something like that, will there be any sort of ability to convert those into OrbX files so that we can then use those render tokens?
Yes. So I think you guys were really the first people to even ask about this part of the system. But I mean, I've always planned this thing as Octane is, like the way that you measure values, right? I mean, it's like a second in the real world is measured by the cesium atom doing something, right? So Octane, for me, Octane Bench is the gold standard of rendering. It's frankly the only rendering unit I know that scales the way that we would want to build an economy around this. But within Octane, and the way Octane Bench is measured, you already have three very different renders. You have the info channel kernels, you have direct lighting, you have path tracing AS4 if you count PMC, and there's no reason why we couldn't add others through something like a SDK that allows you to bring in other renders. And I absolutely imagine that being something we will do next year. Like when we build this system, Octane is going to allow you to sort of set probably the cost of a render in this format, but there's no reason why we couldn't add other renders. And in fact, it's something that I've been talking to others in our space that I respect a lot about, and we'll see. There's nothing I can really speak to more definitively or specifically than that right now, but it is, my goal for the system is that Octane is one of, at least two renders, maybe more, that can be built on this thing and add the maximum amount of value. And the reason why I also am very confident that is going to turn out to be the case is that Octane is going to become more and more, and I mentioned this on the last podcast, more of a framework. So OSL is it's a programmable, thing that allows you to build totally novel things that Octane couldn't do before. And you can already start to play around with the concept of, well, what if we made a compiler for the kernel? So you could actually start to create very different renders just with that. What if we went further and allowed you to have the module system actually load up Octane as an OrbX module, which is my goal. It's what we actually have already got working in Unity, and we can allow you to have different versions of Octane and other renders that plug into the OrbX scene graph and drive a totally different kind of render job. And in order to make that work, the important piece is that when you're switching to a different frequency of rendering, let's say, and probably to do something very different than the way Octane does it exactly, we just need to peg that to some transformation of Octane Bench. And that's totally doable. So it is very much in my short-term roadmap to figure that out and to get the right partners on board to make this ecosystem. Maybe it'll start with Octane, but it should be much bigger. And the render network and the entire render token concept is much larger than what we have currently done up to this point, but it's certainly built on it. And I should point out also that Orbex itself doesn't have anything that's really Octane specific. It's we open source the actual container format as part of our work with MPEG that is online. I posted a couple of links to it. And inside of an Orbex, if you unpack it is just a folder, right? It's just basically you have a Limbic, you have Open Shader language, you have XML for the actual the node graph, and everything is already an open source format that isn't specific to Octane. It's actually basically a bunch of open industry standards that we validated and that we've carefully sort of worked around. And the things that aren't in an EXR or an Limbic file are in the XML inside of the XML that sort of defines the scene graph. And right now there isn't any other format that kind of does everything we need. Although Material X does a good job of getting close to that, but the XML itself is XML. It's very simple to parse, and it's so straightforward that it's actually something we're just contributing as is to MPEG as an open standard for being able to do render work in a way that is not tied to a specific render.
That's super cool.
Tell me a little bit. I'm really interested about this validation system because there's a method so that people can't cheat the system, and there's part of this that actually uses the AI denoiser to compare to the actual render. Is that right? To kind of validate like a watermarked version?
Yes. So yeah, you must have read the blog post where I was talking about that. So a lot of a lot of what people are trying to solve with distributed cryptocurrency and what they call proof of work is how do you validate that the actual work itself is done correctly? And in our case, we have to validate a render. So there's really one super simple way of doing that, and it's built into the system innately, and it's the same thing that we have to deal with on Orc. And sometimes Orc doesn't. Sometimes people get a bad frame. It happens. It's very rare, but it happens. And then they tell us, and they're like, well, I don't like this frame. I want it redone. And we'll basically credit them and redo the render. But the reason that they know that is that they actually look at the output of Orc and they say, this render is what I expected. It's actually, when the artist is creating that render job, has already got Octane running on at least one GPU in the IPR viewport, and they kind of know what they're expected to get back. So the idea is that when they see, Orc is a trusted fulfillment center. So there's no need for us to basically say, here's a watermark and click this to accept it and the watermark goes away. But on a distributed network, when we have, and there's going to be different layers. So I talked about how we'll have, there's a lot of people that want to be part of what Orc is currently doing, and they're small, but if you combine them all together, that could add up to a lot more rendering power. And there is certifications that you can get as a data center. You could be MPA certified, and that means that we can basically trust and we can put a badge on the render work that you want to do on a distributed network and say this is as safe as it is rendering on Orc. Here's why, here's who it is. Outside of that, there is no real guarantees about how, you have to assume that the network's adversarial, and it's true of anything on a distributed system like this. So what we do is that the render token is almost held in escrow. Somebody basically on the network that's running the service and expected to get a render token for work done does a chunk of the render job. It's usually going to be at least one frame, and that frame gets sent back to an interface that looks very similar to what Orc is already doing, except that you look at it and you see it with a watermark. And one thing that at least is essentially, it's like a capture, right? If the artist looks at it and says, well, I kind of know that this looks like what I wanted, okay, I accept it, then the watermark gets removed, there's an exchange, the person that rendered it gets validation. But it's actually fascinating because all of the rendering work that we're doing is for people. It's not some sort of wasted computing energy that is like cryptocurrency. Like cryptocurrency or Bitcoin is literally like just spinning a lock around until you get the right combination. It doesn't have any intrinsic value for all of that energy that's powering it, other than just coming up with a a token that says, okay, I validated that you have a Bitcoin, and it's gotten to the point where every time that you get another coin from one of these systems, it gets harder and harder to that lock that you're spinning goes up by a number, it goes up more and more. So it becomes more and more expensive to mine cryptocurrency, and you're spending more and more energy to the point now where Bitcoin is basically running not on GPUs but on ASICs, and Ethereum is powered by GPUs. But all these cryptocurrency mining operations, which are huge. I mean, I think Bitcoin is more power than many countries. It's like it's a huge waste of energy and money for no good reason. And a lot of Octane users were complaining, I can't get a 1060 because all the cryptocurrency miners scooped them all up. So my goal with the render token is to make sure that if you're fulfilling these render jobs, we can actually get you more Ethereum or more value than you would get, especially as Ethereum becomes harder and harder to mine, by running your mining rigs. And that's something that is super interesting. So the concept of essentially having humans validate whether the work that they expected is what they want is important. There is one way to cheat the system, and it's one of the reasons why I did mention AI. So we're about to release an AI denoiser, which is really good. In fact, the whole point of AI and the way that ultimately the value of this is that it's going to be able to give you, hopefully, within 50 samples, what you get with 5,000. It won't be perfect, but it'll be close. It's meant to be visually similar, right? And that's exactly how AI is able to do all these visual tricks that you see in terms of hole filling and all these other things. And it's not what we really, if you intend for the AI denoiser to work, you can do that locally. It's not like that needs to be part of the render job. But if you want more samples, if you really want that work to be done, what we don't want is for somebody to sort of tap into that render job and then use our own AI denoiser or even another one to then to complete the job and then say, hey, I did less work and here it is. And it's not exactly, because there's always going to be some trace amount of noise that is not completely recovered by the denoiser. It may be visually imperceptible, like a JPEG image, but if you want a PNG or an EXR, not a JPEG, we have to be careful that humans aren't tricked by that. So the best way for us to do that, because AI is really good at this, AI can tell when an AI has denoised its own system, right? So we can basically use that as the first filter. If you're sending us a AI denoised render and you're saying this isn't, then that does automatically your reputation point goes down, and that's not what we're looking for. So that's why it's in the system. It also means that we can ultimately give you a preview as to whether or not this looks like it's finished work, and I think that also is helpful. But it also is very much as essentially being used as a gateway to make sure that the work being done is not sort of cheated on. And AI is a great way to cheat render times and render work to a point. And one of the reasons we know that is that our own AI denoiser is getting really good. And I still have to post the sort of an update too, but it's in some cases it's kind of scary to see what 10 to 50 samples can do versus, I think we have ground truth that's 120,000 samples, and visually it looks really good. It's very much like when JPEG compression came out and you realize at some point you just visually can't see the blocking artifacts. It's just good enough, and it's still 100th the size or 1/30th the size. And so AI is a lot like that. It just can give you results that look visually to a human very close to 100 times the work or 30 times the work, and that is of course a huge cost savings that could affect a lot of stuff locally. But it doesn't always it's not always perfect, and it's not always necessarily what you want to use. It's very much up to the creator whether this is, just like with hot pixels, whether it's something that is blurring, removing, some trivial amount of detail that you may want to have in there. And that's why we're leaving it as an imager function, basically, when we release it.
That's great.
Very cool. So as far as, now I won't hold you to this, as far as timeline goes on, as far as when this will all be launched, from what I read online, it was Q1 of next year. You guys were going to do the kind of the initial offering for all the render tokens. Is that correct? And then hoping to launch it sometime by mid next year. Is that correct?
So I can actually jump in and take this one.
All right.
Yeah. So basically, we are releasing the tokens for public sale on the 19th of September. So actually next Tuesday. Okay. To actually use the render tokens in the way that we intended to, in terms of this peer-to-peer framework that Jules has talked about, that's going to be in Q1 2018.
Okay. Very cool. Okay. So anything else you want to add about render tokens? Because I don't know. I got to say I'm kind of excited about it, especially the future of where I see it going.
Yeah. Well, you guys, I was listening to your last podcast, and you guys have brought up an important point, which is how do you protect your work from being, scooped up by somebody on the network? And part of that starts by, if you're a studio and you need studio level security, well, then you can only pick a node, even on the distributed network, that has this level of certification that you trust.
Cool.
But if you're an end user, a lot of people, when I first posted about render tokens, they were talking about something called homomorphic encryption, which is basically that the computer itself, you can't look into memory and see what it's doing. It's encrypted as it's calculating. The problem is when you do that, it's very slow, and that's not a good solution. So while Orbexes can be fully encrypted, while the connection on the networks can be encrypted, very much like Tor is meant to encrypt all the data passing through these your distributed web browsing sessions. The problem is GPUs are not. I mean, typically they don't have encryption for textures. I mean, they do have encryption for video, which is interesting. And so part of the work that we're doing, going into next year, is to work with the with the GPU vendors, AMD and NVIDIA, to sort of suss that out and to get end-to-end encryption working for distributed rendering. And right off the bat, AMD was very helpful, and they're like, well, we built this already. There is in fact encryption. Without slowing down the GPU on the Xbox, on the PlayStation, and it's part of the it's essentially for security for the games that you're purchasing or running. And I think that and it's something that I mentioned in the blog post. So that's something that is being rolled out to their GPUs. It may be available on existing ones. We have to test it. We have to prove that it works. But there is definitely a path where you can imagine, even on the distributed network, having really complete end-to-end encryption. And we're going to try to make sure that happens as soon as possible. But there's always a danger, and there's always a danger just even with encryption. Like, for example, people can hack into encrypted video. It happens, right? And you can crack Blu-rays, and it exists. There is that danger. So it's just about us making sure we're doing everything in the world that we can to protect and make it as hard as possible to crack open a render job on the distributed network and see what's in it. But I feel pretty confident that that's going to get solved, and certainly since this is something we're looking at, really as a over years going forward. I mean, I think the industry is going to support that as well. It is something that really would be helpful in for a lot of different things, not just our use cases.
Is there a specific encryption method? I think I might have read that, but I don't remember what it is.
So it's actually it's more than encryption. It's called it's a model of how you operate even a CPU. It's called trusted computing, and trusted computing means that there's what the CPU, or in this case the GPU, is doing is inside of a black box that no one can look inside of, and the code that goes into the black box is very much like encrypted channels of communication. So you don't ever see the code that's being sent into that GPU or CPU, and inside of that chip, when it's running, you have no way of looking into it, and that protects decoding video. That's pretty much how video over decoded video works currently, and it's something that can be applied to anything that you can run on a GPU if you build that module in there. And so that is really the best way of solving that problem for distributed rendering. It's probably also important to point out that when you're using third-party render farms, you don't have any idea how secure they are. I mean, you're sending your data over to those things, and the next user could just look into the cache or something and just grab stuff. So in some ways, I think that we could, it's one of the reasons why I want to come up with a really secure way of even letting third-party render farms use the render token to fulfill jobs, because we can even make it more secure than it is today through the system, and that will be something that hopefully we can even bring to completely distributed rendering as well. But trusted computing is the best way to do that. It's great that it's already in GPUs from AMD. We're still sort of investigating that on the NVIDIA side, but it's very early. We're looking into all these different solutions for next year, and there's one other super interesting thing that I'm thinking about, which is that you already have iOS devices like the new iPad that are probably it's based on Metal, but we could at some point have Octane running on something like Vulkan or Metal. In fact, we've been doing this work mainly to get it running on the Mac. And I think that iPad, I mean, we're looking at it, it probably would get about 16 Octane bench, which isn't bad at all. So, you know, it's not 120, but it's 16. And if you leave that thing on at night, and once you get, you know, those things they have, I think, 4 gigs. Once you get about 6 gigs of VRAM and you plug in your iPad overnight, and we can do 16 Octane bench, that's the amazing about the render tokens. The render token is a unit of work. It's not necessarily, in some ways, like we're just like with work. Like you say, I want to do this many Octane bench minutes, but I'm going to get it back within a day. We could leverage devices like newer, you know, mobile chips that are on that get into that 16 Octane bench range down the line, and it's something I'm completely focused on trying to figure out how to do. So it's super interesting and definitely on the roadmap for the future.
And you may have already covered this. I can't remember, and I'm just curious. Are these individual nodes, are they pulling in chunks of the individual file, or does each node get the full file?
I was going to ask that as well, yeah.
So it depends on which part of the what frame you're doing. So let's assume that you're just doing one frame on one node, and that's it. And there's, you know, hundreds of frames in an animation. I guess the issue is that if you have textures that are, you know, and a Limbic file that is reused throughout all the animation, you have to download the whole scene. In fact, the render job only starts. We only start charging even, you know, in some ways. I mean, Orc is ideally only charging you when you're running Octane bench and that's being exhausted or used. So in order to start even one frame, we have to give you an Orbex or some, you know, chunk of an Orbex job that allows you to render that one frame. And that means all the textures, all of the geometry needs to be there. Now, if over the course of those frames there's files that are added in there or textures that aren't used, we can only send down the assets that are sort of connected or entangled with the frame that you're rendering. And that is, in some respects, a little bit how Orc works when you're updating a scene and you're sending it something different to render. So I think that you're probably going to be sending down a certain amount of data to even render one frame, but that's not really the hardest part. I mean, we've seen a lot of scenes passing through Orc, and we have a sense as to what the threshold of time and effort it is to sort of upload stuff to the system. And it's not something that that's going to really hold us back, especially when we're talking about high latency jobs where if, you know, you have an Orbex that's even a gigabyte. It's not, you know, on today's internet, when you have all these GPUs and you're actually trying to make, you know, some sort of, you know, value or money around doing render jobs, pulling that down and then spending an hour rendering to fulfill it isn't that really isn't that much work. And I also think that one of the reasons why we're adding things like FBX into Orbex is so that we can reduce the size where we think it's the heaviest, and that's usually the Limbic part. You know, where we're baking everything into a Limbic, you know, you don't leverage the fact that if you had bone and skin animation, that could be, you know, 1/100th the size. So just having FBX as part of Orbex means that anything that is rigged that way would be a lot smaller and a lot, you know, more trivial to send around. And depending on how even Orc evolves, I think that we're considering building our own inside of Orbex, building basically a really compact and efficient mesh format. And it's going to be similar to what we did with the film buffer format for pausing renders, where we can compress losslessly the geometry portions of an animated scene and allow that to be transmitted much more quickly and efficiently than either Limbic or FBX is now. And we've looked at, we always want to have open source pieces go into Orbex, so if we build something like that, we'd eventually just open source the format. And I think that that's definitely on our to-do list for investigating improvements beyond just having, FBX as we're having now at the end of 3.07 coming out next week.
That's interesting, because that's kind of something that we've been up against recently in working with some bigger projects, is that, there's the ceiling that we hit if, say, we're going to send a scene over the network to a whole bunch of Titans, but then every set of textures is like 10 gig. And it has to distribute that out to every single computer that's running those banks of GPUs. There's a point where it's almost a hindrance, because of the amount of textures and data that has to be transferred before it can start.
Yeah, well, just to be clear, are you talking about network rendering this in Octane, or are you talking about just exporting an Orbex and sending it to?
Yes, we're talking about network rendering, but I can see where being able to to divide these down and only send the pieces that are needed for the individual cards, not necessarily on a local network, but on a cloud, would really be helpful.
Yeah, and there is. I think on network rendering, if you're using it the way that from within Octane, and you're hooking up 20 GPUs, if you have even gigabit connections between your nodes, it's not that bad. I mean, it can certainly be. I mean, it can certainly add 10 seconds every time you're refreshing those GPUs, but it's not the minutes or hours. I think it's much different when you're talking about completely decoupled rendering, where you're sending pieces of the scene and it has to be depacked and loaded, in a different session from the one that's inside of the host application. That's how Orc works, and that's how this system would work. So the idea is that we do have an army of plugin developers like Ahmed that are building these great integrations, and by giving them more and more tools that allow them to save procedural work inside of Octane and an Orbex file. For example, if all the if Substance Designer textures don't have to be stored as 8K maps but could just be MDL, or if we have procedurals that are currently baked in C4D be instead saved as a one-line OSL file, things start to get a lot smaller, efficiencies go way up, and that's something that, for example, textures that can be expressed procedurally certainly can be encoded in OSL, and similar shader languages like MDL, which is another one that we're looking at down the line. And scene data is also something that should be treated that way, and FBX is one huge improvement over Limbic, and we're just going to keep going down that path and seeing if we can get more and more of the scene itself to be procedurally encoded inside of the interchange format. And it's hard, but it's not impossible. We're just going to have to do that work over successive releases. But OSL and FBX, just in this release and the next one with 308, are going to help a lot with that, I think.
Now, let me ask you this. You had touched on this a little bit ago, and just very briefly, but I kind of want to go back to it as far as the cost for the render tokens. Now, you had mentioned a 256 Octane bench score for, what was it, like 25-cent render tokens? Or did I? Yeah,
okay. It's roughly if the tokens are about a quarter a piece. So, like, as a child of the '80s, everything for me is put a quarter in the machine to get something. You get something meaningful back for even if it's 4 minutes or 15 minutes. And at 256 seconds, that's around 4 minutes. And what's interesting is that as far as I know, there is not a single GPU today that does 256 Octane bench. I think the highest is 230 on the very expensive P100s. And I think that where you can look at it as being transformed this way. You can also do instead of 4 minutes at 256 Octane bench, it could be 1 minute at 1,000 Octane bench, or 1 second at 65,000 Octane bench, or 1 Octane bench in 16 hours, right? So the work itself can be sort of spread over time, and the frequency at which that work is performed is important if you're doing a lot of rendering. And even with Orc, and even with rendering outside of your own system, there's a threshold where if you can render it fast enough on your own system, it doesn't make much sense. But when you're doing a lot of frames, or when you're doing a lot of dimensions of work, even a very fast render is almost a bottleneck. You almost want to offload that and just get that all these frames done. And that's sort of how the tokens work. So we're starting them from the point of it's priced pretty much equivalently to the work that you would get from spending the same amount on Orc right now. And the thing is, the reason why Orc is the price it is because to really cover the amount of usage on it, we have to essentially go to the price of it's like the highest common denominator in a sense. Like, we have to essentially price it based on the cost of the mass, the majority of GPUs on the system. But as we get more and more GPUs that don't necessarily have those hard costs, then we can have it so that more Octane, some multiple of that 256 by 256 Octane bench is encoded or unlocked by a single render token, and that's where we can begin to really add more, more value than what we're able to do today through centralized cloud rendering.
So basically, someone is saying, I want to pay 50 render tokens, 50-cent render tokens, So basically, they would be doubling the amount of render speed that they're using. Is that correct? Or if they're just wanting to spend, to put it in perspective, I just looked up the quick Octane bench. 256 Octane bench is about the equivalent to two 980 Ti's.
Yep.
So basically, you're spending 25-cent render tokens for the ability to render on two 980 Ti's, in a sense.
In a sense.
For approximately 4 minutes.
Yes, and that is exact. And the thing is, at a small scale, it doesn't sound like it's that valuable. And the thing is, what we found. No,
actually, that I was thinking that sounds very inexpensive for me to be able to send it out to get a job rendered.
Yes.
Because one of my computers is running two 980 Ti's, and it's relatively quick at some of these render jobs. So if I was able to send it out, to me, that seems like it would be almost very inexpensive. Or I could set up one of my secondary machine to be rendering other jobs, while I'm rendering that one,
right.
And it would almost equal out to no cost.
Yeah, well, you're right in the sense that I think it's at least it's a very valuable price point in the sense that that's exactly why Orc even exists. And the thing is, what we've seen is that Orc jobs, when we launched this thing to everyone not that long ago, and we let people, you can get about $50 worth of render credits on Orc, and if you want more, call us up or send us an email. And every time that happens, it's always orders of magnitude more. It's like I need 500 render credits, or I need, or $5 worth of render credits, or 5,000, and we've had 50,000, 150,000. So those kinds of scales are literally impossible with the power that we have even in the downtown LA, the old Pat Bell building we're in at Otoy to fulfill. And that's where the cloud or rendering beyond your own system becomes not just valuable but actually essential. And I want to make that kind of I want to make it trivial to get rendering spread out through the system. So I think that even getting a 25-cent render job versus something that you really need about $5 to sort of even get into, and then you need a subscription on top of that. If we can get to that point and make it really easy, that's great. And it could even be that if you just run your computer overnight in days or months that you're not using those GPUs, and you could actually make those same tokens, it might be free. And that's what's interesting about a system like this, is that we're the exchange of rendering power and value and brokering that in chunks that are this small. I mean, I don't think going lower than 25 cents for a single chunk of rendering time that makes much sense, but it's actually it does make a lot of it does add a lot of value when it's in these chunks that are essentially starting at the price of a quarter.
So the monetary value of these render tokens, you're saying is it basically 1-to-1 with dollars versus render tokens? Like you spend a quarter, you get a quarter worth of render tokens. I don't know if I'm making sense with that.
I guess maybe Colin could talk more about how the token sale works. But essentially, you're getting if you go to an arcade, right, and you put in a 20 and you get back whatever it is, Castle Park or Malibu Castle, little coins that allow you to then put the money into an arcade machine and do something with it. That's what the render tokens are. So as they when we put them up and we do this token sale, and how many people buy render tokens for a quarter each. Those are basically, it's like the back in the day when you'd say, well, $1 before Nixon, right, was I don't know, like 35 ounces of gold or something like that, or maybe it's the inverse, and we'll exchange that token for we'll guarantee that there'll be this many minutes of this much Octane bench work done, and a little bit like work, we can't always know exactly when you're going to get that back. It could be really fast, it could be longer, and that depends on how many what the demand is, what the system is, but you will get that work done. And what's interesting is if it turns out that we have so many GPUs that we can get this work done, and we have extra GPU power to do it, double that rendering work, and maybe that happens because GPUs just double in speed and everyone in the network has that, then you can unlock more and more power. But ultimately, the render tokens are very much a measure of Octane bench minutes, and they're designed, or they're tuned, I should say, around the idea that renders that you want to do typically, if you're going outside of your system, it's for something you'd want the next day or the same day, and that's the idea, is that you can essentially decide on up to a precision of maybe a quarter, that you spend how much rendering work you want done today on a network of potentially unlimited GPUs, and let that sort of drive the system. But the render tokens are the unit of exchange for value to Octane bench power per minute, basically. And
so you're saying that it's similar to the value of a Bitcoin going up in price?
No,
is that correct?
And I could step in here. So the render token, is only similar to Bitcoin in the sense that they're both built on blockchain technology, even though we do use the Ethereum network. But what we're saying is we've actually used the render token as sort of a utility token, as they call them in the space, where this render token gives you a specific amount of rendering power per token. Now, that power, of course, depends on the amount of GPUs available in the network, as Jules said, and you're only, guaranteed that specific rendering power once you enter into the smart contract of the network. So, sometimes there's going to be a lot of GPUs available, and you can kind of pick and choose, and the system will do that automatically. Okay. Sometimes it'll be, a little bit more restricted, but at the end of the day, the amount of work that you get from one render token won't change. But the time spent rendering based on the power changes. Yeah.
Okay.
Cool.
That makes sense.
That's cool. All right. Okay, so we've talked render tokens. I don't have any more questions. Dave, do you have any more questions about that?
Not on that, no. I did want to quickly mention, though, and we talked about it on the last show as well, the feature request system is up. Did you want to talk about that at all?
Sure. Yeah. So we've been. It was something that was a long time in coming, and I think that it's been great because we have. A lot of disparate channels for getting features sort of sent to us, and it really is important that we know what the majority of users want, and they can and we can rank them, and we can do that per plugin. We can do that for the core of the engine. So having that page up has been great, and it's already been really helpful. So it gives. It literally gives a vote for all of the users on the, in the Octane community to drive. Because we want to do everything. We want to support, everything that users want. We have some, work that just has to get done no matter what, like OSL and the like. But when it comes to picking what to work on next and what to focus on month to month, this kind of a system is great, and that's why we put it up. So I'm glad it's there.
It's a voting system too, so people can see these requests and see what the top ones are right now.
Yes. And the developers also, it's also part of the forum, so the developers can speak to that or answer that or say, can you explain what you mean, or this is done, or this is not possible anytime soon. But typically it's been more of a way of us seeing, so we, because there are users that are very vocal about a feature or a specific thing, and they're not necessarily representing everyone else, in the community. So getting more users to say, +1, this is really what we want, and actually seeing the numbers around that, and giving it certainly a little bit of time for that to accumulate is going to be helpful. But it's also meant to just, I was saying on the last show, we want to move to much faster release cycles, and we also want to push features out faster. So knowing again which ones are the biggest pain points and seeing that change month to month based on what we're releasing and what people are asking for is very helpful.
Yeah.
Cool. Yeah, and we'll have that. We'll have the link to that if you guys want to check it out in the show notes. And so one last thing that I wanted to touch on was something you mentioned earlier before we started recording was the new release of 3.08 is coming up.
Yes, so we're wrapping up 307. There's another test build release that'll have the FBX pieces in there, and I think then that will be largely done. And in parallel, we've accelerated our release cycle. So we have, the plugin developers like Ahmed have the library for 308 already, so they can start giving us feedback, which, as early as possible. And that build includes about half of the 308 features, but the half that really is important to us is OSL. So they have the ability to program OSL shaders. And, there's definitely a lot of interesting feedback. It's something that in our own, and, we definitely made decisions to move up OSL and accelerate it by focusing on the shaders and things like that we could make programmable. So there's been a lot of great feedback, but just getting that out there to all the plugin developers to start, working with is like an important step towards getting that out there in users' hands, which we're targeting, hopefully within a month or so. It might go further back, but it'll ultimately depend on what feedback we get and stability issues we run into once we see how the plugins use Open Shader language and some of the other 308 features. The part that isn't in 308 just yet, but we're adding, and that's sort of the second half of that list, is all of the OSL material work that we've been doing. as I mentioned on the last, on the last podcast I was on with you guys, it turns out that there's not a million different types of, programmable materials that users want. There's maybe like a dozen different things, including things like tune shading, and all of that essentially is baked into 308. So we're just going to be updating the material system to include all of the OSL test work that we had done without actually putting and dealing with the OSL programmable pipeline, which is very tricky and probably needs to be almost separated out. And so I think that we have a really good balance with 308. The other thing that we're also working on is looking at improving subsurface scattering, I think possibly in this release. If not, it'll be in 309. Awesome. And yeah, I think it's going to be an amazing release. We're really excited by that.
And about it, is there a timeline in which you think that might be released? I know we're still like looking at alphas of 3.07.
Yeah.
Yeah, so we have teams working on these now in parallel. There's even a team working on 309. So there's nothing that's really holding up. 307 isn't holding up 308 other than the fact that we just want to make sure 307 is totally bug-free. But since it's one of the very first times that we've actually had concurrent development being done, and so that we could speed things up, and 308, getting it working and getting plugin developers to validate that they're able to use OSL and all these things is definitely the halfway mark. And I think that means we could roughly expect it maybe in a month or so. I mean, I said on the last podcast I'm going to stay away from doing dates, but I do think that giving sort of a more transparency into exactly like what part of that process we're in is helpful. So it's definitely not something we're thinking of putting out in December or anything like that. I mean, the idea is to try to get releases in 1 to 2 months for these big but practical sets of features. So 308 is looking pretty good. It's the fact that it's already in integrated plugins is definitely a promising validation, I think, of the timeline that we're aiming for.
Awesome.
Right.
Awesome. All right, Jules, thank you so much for being back on the show and talking about this. It's something that, like, as soon as you announced it, like, the render token stuff, I emailed your guys and I was like, hey, is there any additional information we can find out about this? Because
like literally the day after we talked.
Yeah. I appreciate you coming back on and talking about this, because I like that it adds more of that, transparency that everyone can kind of get to know. It's something that we all get excited about, but it almost feels like, just reading some of these, we only get bits and pieces and we got to piece them all together. So it's really nice to have you come on and actually talk about it.
Well, thank you guys for having me back on, and we'll definitely do these regularly, because I find that posting things even on the Facebook group, it's just diffuse. Like being able to come here and really do a deep dive with you guys for an hour on this stuff is awesome, and we'll definitely keep doing these again and again. I love it.
All right, cool. Thank you guys so much.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you, guys.
And we're back. So,
wow, that was such a great interview.
That was a great hour we just had there. That was all in.
I know, David, you were
order.
so quiet during all of it.
I'm going to need to go back in
were.
and listen to it again to really take it in and like give feedback on that, I think.
Yeah, I guess you are.
Yeah.
I mean, it was all live, right?
Yeah, where's my head at? I don't even know. I feel like I was absent for the whole thing.
Yeah. So now that we are into the second portion of the second hour of Ravcock, What's Your Flavor?
What's your flavor?
We're going to first of all, we had some weird order of recording things.
Yes.
As well as the fact that tomorrow we are recording next week's episode because we're going to be gone with Cornelius Damrick, who just finished that awesome new piece, which is technically part 2 of 52 Hertz. And so you'll hear us say, oh, we were talking about the feature request system last week. Yeah. No, we weren't. We originally were scheduling that interview in a different order, and there were hurricanes and things happened. So
there's a lot of podcasting today and tomorrow.
So much.
So but actually, hey, I did want to say this. I want to throw this out there for if there's any Portland Brographers, out there, I'm going to be there this Saturday. If you guys want to hang out, hit me up, because I'd love to hang out and shoot the crap.
Sweet.
So now that we are in this section, I know, David, this is, Octane, your thing, right?
Yep.
So we got some fun stuff to talk about here. First of all, we wanted to talk about the OTOY feature requests that are out right now. I was going to go over some of the top things because it's pretty interesting now to see what people are voting up.
Yep.
You know, like, what are these things?
People are basically voting for the Brograph Luminous Spotlight to go away.
I know. I saw that. I didn't upvote that one.
It's okay if you did.
I did.
I put a little comment. I'm a little biased, no pun intended. But you know, there is a thing for that. You can get it for a pretty good price, you know, but I mean, that's just me.
And it works great, you know.
Yeah. And dude, 2.0 of that, whenever I get that done, is going to be really cool. I've got a crazy list of ideas. I've got to figure out how to implement it and maybe learn Python in the process. But man, if I can get that thing finally put out, oh man, it's going to be awesome. So let's talk about these feature requests. Number one, that everybody is probably not surprised about is the exclude light from a specific object's reflection or refraction.
Yeah.
And hopefully shadow would be included in that as well.
Yeah, I would think that would be a big want. That's really, to me, that's the only really unbiased or biased feature that I would want.
Yeah.
You know? And I would think that they would be able to incorporate that relatively easily. I say relatively easily because I don't know how hard it is to program.
Because you know nothing about it.
Right, because I know nothing about it. But they were able to implement that into the newest version where it, you know, you can exclude it from an entire area. I would think like just with like maybe a tag or something you'd be able to exclude it. But
Exactly.
I don't know.
We've also got people saying correct displacement workflow. Displacement can be a little wonky sometimes.
Yeah.
I think that's what they're talking about. I didn't read like the full description of that, but sometimes it's hard to adjust displacement and things. And it is weird too. Like you have to go like 10 steps in to even start doing displacement.
Yeah.
Increased number of max polygons. I mean,
I don't think.
I
I think that's all limited to your graphics card, isn't it?
No, there's still a limit.
Oh, okay.
I forget what it
know
is.
Never hit that.
And I think
David, what would be your big feature that you would want?
I think it's what you guys said. I mean, I think it's kind of what everyone, I think it's the number one thing, which is we want some biased render features within Octane, which would be light exclusions, light linking, you know, shadow, stuff like that. I mean, I think it's all pretty basic stuff, you know, especially from my end since I don't do any coding. But I think it's all, you know, very rudimentary things like, hey, I don't want this light to be seen in this reflection of this specific object, not just the whole scene, but maybe this individual object. It's just more broadcast standard features. I think would be my number one thing, and I might even go out there on a limb and say it's my only thing. You know, I can be picky and start getting into this like super specifics, but you know what? That's not how motion graphics is. Motion graphics is you learn the tool and then you find out ways to work around and problem solve for what specific needs you want. That's what we are. Motion designers, designers are problem solvers, you know? It's not supposed to be this button does everything for me. And I hate this mentality that we got to jump on a software that does everything for us. And we no longer think for ourselves and don't know how to problem solve our way out of an issue. And if this program doesn't do it, well, I'm going to pop over to the next program that does. And I hate that. I hate that mentality.
I've seen that kind of a lot lately, you know, with the whole Redshift to Octane debate, especially the one that you poked the bear at the other day.
I'm going to keep doing it because no one's doing it. No one's doing it, and it frustrates me because when I started in this industry, if I listened to those people, I would be using Maya right now. I would not be using Cinema 4D. The same exact type of people that are dissing Octane right now are the same people that were telling me using Cinema 4D was the wrong program and that I needed to learn Maya. And I refused because I said, you know what? For the type of work that I'm doing, for the type of workflow I'm doing, you're wrong. Just because the button that you like and are comfortable with is no longer in this program, that doesn't mean this program's not good. And they could never break out of it, and it's kind of an old mindset, and I don't subscribe to that. It's what product, what tool does the job best for you,
exactly,
and that's the product that you're going to use. And I'll repeat it again, I would be using Maya right now if I listened to that standard. And it's funny because I didn't, and now look at where Cinema 4D is at. You know, it was a group, a community that was strong and tight knit, and we said, you know what? Sure, there's flaws in it. I see flaws in it. Yeah, that button would be nice, but all these pros weigh out those little cons, and I'm not stuck into that mindset that I need those tiny little nuances here and there to remain in that tool. I'm going to figure out another way around it, and now they slowly start adding in those features, and I see that as Octane right now. Now, I do think they need to start adding in stuff. And I think the other biggest problem people have is that Octane seems to do something right now, a toy, where they overpromise and underdeliver. And I think they need to look at it just like we look at our industry, which is we underpromise and overdeliver, right?
Yeah.
And if they do that, because I don't see that really as an issue. They're like, they said they would do this and they didn't, and it's like, but if they didn't say that, would we still have that big of a problem?
Jules,
it's like the Mac. It's like the Apple thing. Like Apple would say, "Okay, we're going to do this, this, and this," and then they'd say, "And one more thing," and then they blow you out of the water with something. You know, that's
exactly. And Jules kind of. I think the big thing that we talked about with Jules a couple weeks ago and he kind of apologized about, was that they were kind of a little overzealous on the timeline. You know, on some of the 3.0 stuff, or the 3.1. And, he took responsibility for that, and that's cool. I totally appreciate that, And so it's cool to see them, like he was just talking about in the interview we just did. You remember this, David, of course. Where he's saying they're trying to push out, monthly updates and stuff like that, which is cool, And so that's good. And I think once we get into 4.0 next year sometime, that it's going to be... It's gonna feel a whole lot
different.
It's gonna feel a whole lot different. It's gonna be less like we're trying to fight this whatever.
And we've talked about it on the show
battle
before. Like, stuff happens, and running a company, like, I mean, you run into obstacles and stuff.
Yeah.
Just being transparent is really all it is. That's the best thing.
And I think they're doing a really good job. Like, I got to give them a lot of respect for coming on the show and speaking at least these past 2 times, because I think he's, especially with I think he said a couple weeks ago that the Cinema 4D community is probably the biggest one, as far as Octane render, and that's cool, because I feel like we've got at least, I don't know, maybe we're just a little podcast, whatever, but maybe we've got a little bit of influence.
I think
into
you do.
What people are thinking.
You do, and it's funny because I actually came super close to dropping Octane when you guys came back from NAB or from SIGGRAPH, excuse me, and talked about it, because I said, you know what? I'm not willing to stand behind a company that doesn't support its community. But then right after what happened, Jules came on the show, and to me, I said, you know what? I was like, this seems like a company that doesn't actually want that to be them, and they're willing to do something to make that kind of a change. And I'm like, okay, I'm going to give them another chance, because that was my biggest thing. You can slip up all over the place, but if you become a company that doesn't support its community, then I'm not going to support you. And they showed, at least for this moment, they showed a sign that they do care about our voices, and they jumped on your show. So
and the other thing about the whole situation is, like, I talked about this a few weeks ago too, is that talking to Barton about this, is that you still want to keep up with everything, and this whole Octane Redshift thing and the whole Render Wars thing is really like the PC Mac battle of
it kind of is
of our decade, it seems like right now.
And you know what? Go ahead.
Like you said, right tool for the right job, of course. There's nothing wrong with learning Octane and Redshift.
Yeah. Dude, you know what I've been doing?
If Redshift is going to work better, do that. If Octane's going to work better, do that.
You know what I've been learning all month? Like, I have not been in Cinema 4D, like, barely at all. I have been watching Houdini tutorials for the past week. I downloaded Houdini Apprentice, and I literally, it's so funny because I haven't been in Houdini, but I've been watching tons and tons of tutorials, and I feel like I'm kind of like just, getting it, and it's the same thing, it's the right tool for the job, and you support whatever people you like. It doesn't have to be all or nothing. it can be a
Yes.
mixture of everything.
Yeah,
you
the
know?
PC Mac
you don't
thing, now
have
we
to.
have- we
you
have
don't
PCs and
have
Macs
to hate the
everywhere.
Redshift people. The Octane people don't have to hate the Redshift people. The Redshift
Exactly.
people don't have to hate the Octane people. And the Arnold people don't have to hate everyone. You know?
Yeah, we were like big Mac people for so long, and now we have both, and it's like, you know, I spend most of my time on a PC, but like if I'm on a podcast, I prefer sitting in front of the Mac still.
Yeah.
You know, for audio, I'm still on Mac. If I'm editing, I still like to move over to the Mac instead. You know, but I'm liking some of this PC. It's just, you know, just do whatever you want for that day. Like mix it up. If whatever works, you don't have to choose.
Yep. And here's my thing is I don't like this mentality that's getting pushed on the Cinema 4D community, because the Cinema 4D community, we didn't gravitate towards Cinema 4D because of every single button it had. We gravitated towards Cinema 4D because of the ease of use. And now this persona, this Maya persona of it needs to do everything is getting pushed on our tools. And I'm going to take a stance to it. And I've been quiet for a long time. And I think a lot of artists, because it's what we do, we stay quiet for a long time, and I think it's the wrong mindset. I don't dislike Arnold people, I don't dislike Redshift people, Octane people, physical render people. It's what is the job for the tool. But when then people start snubbing other people and saying this is the only one, and I get on and I'm probably gonna quiet down so I don't insult anyone. But you know, when I look and the only option like that is right for anyone right now currently is Redshift, I'm like, what the heck is going on? Like, why is this getting forced on me so much? Because I'm using Octane right now, and I don't see any issues like that are causing me to be like, you know what, I just cannot use this. And it's not a production-ready render. Like, those same words were told to me 10 years ago about Cinema 4D. It's not a production-ready 3D animation software. And guess what? I used it for production ever since that day that someone told me that, and never had an issue. And now it's saying it again, and I'm just like, you know what? I can't wait to learn Redshift. I'm really excited. I think Redshift looks fantastic. I love the results. Man versus Machines using Redshift. They're doing, obviously, they never don't, but they're doing beautiful work with Redshift. I'm looking forward to using that in my arsenal. But I am not going to just say this is the only option for any size studio, small, big, individual, daily render, production, commercial. It's like, that is just a total bunch of crap, and it fires me up, because I mean it's a closed subject, because I'm telling you the same thing happened to me. People snub me for using Cinema 4D, and now look at where we're at. You know, it's a strong community, and if you can like put your voice out there and have the CEO of that company come out and say, we hear you, and let's see if he makes a change. I mean, it's on the company to say, you know what, we hear the voices of this industry and we're going to support them. It's on them now, but I'm not gonna snub them when they're coming out and trying to show they're making a change. So
right,
yeah,
exactly. The Final Cut Pro. Back in the day when it first came out.
I was about to say, are we talking about Final Cut Pro now?
No. Final Cut Pro, when it first came out, you know, everybody was like, "No, Avid, yo."
Yeah.
You know, and then
you
Final
still
Cut
get
Pro,
a lot of those Avid people.
You do.
Like, Avid. No, you're not. Or I think.
But
it's,
Premiere
it's
too.
kind of the same with After Effects and Nuke. You know.
Oh yeah.
After
of
Effects.
course.
You're using After Effects. Everyone knows After
How
Effects.
quaint.
I'm using Nuke.
I prefer to, if I want to render a graphic and just put a vignette on it, I prefer to put 50 nodes on it for some reason first.
Yes.
Instead of just doing a vignette and hitting render.
Right.
You know? But, you know, the same thing with Premiere, because Final Cut kind of went the wayside. And then Premiere came in. Everyone's like, really? Switch to Premiere? And all of a sudden, everybody's on Premiere. And of course, the Avid people are still like, oh, well, Avid's always been the best. But, you know, but that's exactly the same thing. It's exactly.
Yeah, and I was a
know.
big Mac fan forever. I mean, as a graphic designer, I mean, any designer, I think we grew up on Mac. And I think only about 4 years ago now, I made the switch to PC, and I was reluctant. I didn't want to do it. And now, but it was what made sense, you know, and it has to come to that point. I mean, I was reluctant for several years before I made that change. It wasn't like, oh, well, this month so-and-so says this is the best one to do, so I'm dropping this and just going. It's like, no, I mean, it has to be worked out. I mean, you got to hit that wall numerous times before you make that jump. And now I'm only PC. And I can't ever imagine going back to Mac personally for my main work machine because it just doesn't make sense cost effective wise, let alone anything else. But I don't know.
But you do have a Mac with you right now, right?
I've got one, and funny enough, I'm not using it because in order to download Skype, it required that I updated my OS, and so I hopped on my Microsoft Studio.
Yeah.
Nice.
Dave, check out that link that I just threw in Skype. That's for a little bit later. I just noticed this. It's a new plugin that the Pixel Lab did. I want to talk about that later.
This has been around.
We
talked about this a long time ago.
Did we?
Yeah.
All right. It's amazing.
This is yeah. This
Anyway,
is,
okay.
No, and it's not Pixel Lab. This is their blog, I think. This is pointing to Windmill Art. This is the JS Greebles thing, and it's pointing to David Aryev's tutorial.
That's funny.
On iDesign.
Okay, never mind. I'm stupid.
We should have had David Aryev on here with me.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, too many Davids.
Oh, the triple Daves. That would have been epic.
The triple D.
Triple D. Matt, you might want to sit that one out.
Oh, I will.
Let's just text him and tell him to just jump into the podcast randomly.
Oh my god.
And
Let's make this
talking
thing
about
5 hours long.
Yeah, we're talking about Octane not being production worthy. Go.
Oh man.
Dude, we're already at probably like an hour 45 right now.
I'm just getting warmed up.
Yeah, you are.
Oh, we're good.
I feel that passion.
Epic.
Oh man, I'm steaming.
I feel like it's about time for this. Hold on.
Here's the
All right,
thing.
No, you guys keep talking.
Everybody is going to
yes,
Chicago this week, right? So everybody's jumping on the plane, and they're going to be needing a little more podcast time because they're bored on the plane, and so they're going to have some extra Brograph time, to get them through the plane ride. So
get
all right,
ready.
Go ahead.
Take all your dreams and let's do it.
In case you don't know, that's David Brodeur last year, half res.
I've been told a few times I looked like Shia LaBeouf. By a few times, it's a few hundred times.
Yes.
And and last year, the Just Do It happened. Maybe this year it will happen again.
You're not going to have EJ to really get you pumped for it, though.
It's all right. I'll take EJ's place. I'll take EJ's place.
Wait, are you sure he's not going?
He's not going.
He just
I just hope not, because we've given him a room away.
But he just wrote me, I think, like yesterday, and was like, "Let's chat at half res."
What?
Yeah, he just canceled his flight and told us he wasn't coming. I mean, he was rooming with us.
Yeah.
So
I would hope that he would let us know.
Yeah, I know. Oops. Now you're sleeping on the floor, EJ.
Yeah.
Let's finish off this list real quick because this is something that I really wanted to. Okay, here's what I don't get. The title of this request is transmission for glossy materials, but I got to say I would like emission for glossy materials.
I agree.
Do you think that's what they meant?
Maybe.
Probably.
But isn't that annoying that it's like, why don't I have an emission tab in this? And why do I have to? And it works if you just combine them with a mixed texture.
Material.
Yeah, I agree.
So, that's a good one. Single material instead of separate diffused glossy specular.
I'll disagree with that. I don't hate the way that works.
Why can't it be a single material? You could just turn off one of the options like you do everything else.
I don't know. Like, honestly, I actually kind of really like that it's diffuse, glossy, and specular. Like, I feel like that's super user friendly. As weird as that is, like, okay, I know exactly what type of material I'm making right now.
Right.
Like
that
was one of.
I saw who someone requested that. Was it Raul? What's his name?
Oh, really? Raphael
Rao, yeah. I think he requested something like that, and just because he's like such a genius at like material breakdown, I was like, I guess I'd support that. Just on the single fact that I see the materials he brings, and like if you watch any of his like talks, like you're like, okay, this guy, he knows what he's talking about. Maybe I'll let that go.
Yeah, that's funny.
Everything he posts about all of that is so over my head. I can't even figure out what he's talking about.
I don't even know how to pronounce the words.
Yeah. I mean, that's a good one. I don't know if I'd really consider that top material, but then faster fog.
Yeah, I mean, that's obvious.
Yeah.
Procedural and VDB. And then support for Cinema 4D's Spotlight. We better start making some new plugins.
Yeah, I know, right?
So
I'm sure that's
okay,
inevitable, though, right? The Spotlight, I think that's inevitable.
Probably is.
But that's why you guys made a good plugin, is because you made something that should have been there to begin with.
Yeah.
The thing about that is that although would be possible to do, you would first have to have a Spotlight in Octane standalone, and then Ahmed would have to implement that into Cinema 4D the way that we did anyway. You know what I mean?
We should just talk to Otoy and be like, hey, do you want to buy our Spotlight?
Buy it.
Right,
Buy
just
it.
buy us out.
Just buy us out.
Be a good spot to be in.
So, and also there's, speaking of the old render wars, there was an article, this isn't totally fresh, this is from last month, I think, but we forgot to talk about it, which it was on Motionographer, called Winning the Render Wars with Chad Ashley. So there'll be
it was a pretty good article.
It's a great
I thought
article.
It was really good.
It's great. I think it's
It
actually
really breaks
very
down.
unbiased too. I think Chad was actually very fair. Well,
no pun intended.
Chad knows he's got a kind of a biased opinion. I actually wrote Chad when the article came out, and I said I think he did a really good job at remaining somewhat neutral on them. I mean, there's all pros and cons for each, and he even starts it off saying that this is my opinion, and my opinion is kind of slanted. Right?
Yeah.
I don't know. I thought it was somewhat fair.
Yeah, no, I thought it was a pretty good. I thought it was a pretty fair assessment of all the renderers. I mean, it's kind of the same stuff that we've been talking about for the past year, you know.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So,
and then another link that I meant to bring up a while back, just because I thought it was really pretty, is there's this random person out there who doesn't really like promote his stuff that much, but there was a gallery on Behance that Tom Glimpse actually posted, I think, in the Octane Facebook group, and he posted this whole thing called Unknown Times Unknown, and okay,
really pretty.
Matt, I'm going to ask you this before I bring this up, but when you see these renders, whose style does it remind you of? Right off the bat?
It totally looks like David's.
Yeah, that's the first thing I thought.
Yeah,
like whose? Like mine or like
yours?
Like
yours.
Like yours.
Because you're doing the whole, invasion series that you've been doing, for going on like a year and a half now, right?
Yeah, I've been changing the name of it. I don't know how much different it's getting. I typically change the series, so I constantly teach myself something new, right? And I find like lots of artists that post things will just kind of make the same thing over and over and over again and not really learn anything. I'm looking at it right now, guys, too. I don't know. I think it's different enough. I wouldn't claim this is mine. I think some of it's inspired.
There's a couple of them that have just a slight influence that looks similar to yours.
Don't get me wrong. I'm not saying that this is like a ripoff of you. What I'm saying is it's got that cool organic feel that you've been doing in some of your stuff, and that's why I like it.
Me too. I think they're doing a badass job of it. Even, hey, I think they're probably inspired. I'm cool with that. I mean, they made it their own. I've seen like literally direct copies of stuff that, and I'm like, man, you didn't even try to make this your own.
Yeah.
I've seen a lot of that where it's the like thing with the circles in it that are popping in and out, like
pulsing globulars.
Pulsing. Yeah, I've seen a lot of copies.
I knew
of
that would happen when I did the thing for Motionographer, the step-by-step. Like, I mean, I showed everyone how to do it, and I actually saw an artist come out with a tutorial after that, too.
Oh, really?
That did the exact same thing, and I was, I don't care. People are going to copy. I can't put my time, my energy on that. I mean, these renders are pretty awesome. I think everyone should check these out. These look pretty badass, right?
It's like the thing is that it's I would not call it a copy at all. I'm just thinking it's the same style because it's like almost alien organic, like something you would see on another planet. But what's cool about that is you can let your imagination run wild with something like this. It's not just here's a sphere on top of a plane. This, you can really go a lot of directions with this field.
You know what this tells me? I gotta step my game up. That's what it tells me. Right? And
but these aren't animated.
Well, there you go, right?
Yeah.
So I've tried to, as times progressed, I was doing more plant stuff, stills, and then I started doing more like plant stuff, animate it, and now I'm doing more like creature stuff animated. So I'm trying to like evolve and stay one step ahead, because it's just inevitable. And I think that's cool. I think it's cool if you can create something and people copy. I think you're doing something right. But I think it's cool. Our artist community is really cool, because I get dozens of people that send me stuff weekly that they're like, hey, this person's ripping stuff off, and I appreciate that. But at a certain point, I don't pay attention to it, because what is
you
it?
should be flattered by that.
Imitation is the greatest form of flattery, or whatever that is. And I think that's really cool. And I make tutorials because I want people to. I think everyone should be pushing themselves to do the best. And if people like what I'm doing, I want them to know how I'm doing it and what I'm doing. So I think, I really like this guy's stuff. I think it's cool. If he's like, hey, dude, I was totally inspired by you, and this is what I made, I'd be like, well, you just took it to another level. So cool.
Heard.
Cool. And by the way, Jules just posted the denoise examples on the Facebook group. Really
just
interesting.
as in like Sunday night. You guys are probably listening to this on Monday
probably
night.
saw it already. No, but it's got the 10 sample, except the truck one is 50. It's got the 10 sample, and then it has the AI denoise, and then it has 120,000 sample version to compare it to, and looks really good. There's a couple pieces of it that you can see, what usually happens in a denoiser, where you get a little bit of that soft blur in some of the color.
Yeah, it's the same type of stuff that he was talking about with the JPEG compression,
right?
Like when it was first coming out.
Yeah, and it's
David, you remember that when he mentioned that on the show, right?
Right.
It was great. It was great. I took notes on it.
And okay, so let me ask you this as we kind of transition out of the Ravcock here.
What's your flavor?
Yeah.
So the whole PC Mac thing, because we were talking about that, editing wise. There's a couple codec things that I had going both directions this week that I wanted to talk about, because again, being on PC and Mac, I want to be able to freely flow back and forth and not, this thing doesn't work, this thing doesn't work. And I was bringing up a project on my Mac this week because I have all my plugins loaded, all my software loaded on the Mac, and Matt had finished a job, Samsung job or something on a PC, and he's was in a meeting. He's like, "Hey, I got to make these changes. Can you make these real quick?" I'm like, "Okay," but then comes the hour and a half long process of reconnecting files, finding things on Dropbox, realizing I don't have the right codecs because I'm on a Mac, all that kind of stuff. And what came up was, first of all, this is the easier of the two problems I had. Number one, the Avid, what are they, DNXR
HD or something like that. Yeah.
All that. I didn't have those, and I loaded them. And what's weird is, like, if you load them and you try and open a piece of footage, in my experience, and maybe there's a glitch, or maybe it's just a fluke, you would open it and you still wouldn't see a picture after you did the codec.
I loaded the DNX HD codec in my computer. I downloaded them from the Avid website and installed them, and it worked fine for me.
In QuickTime Pro or the crappy QuickTime X?
In Premiere. It worked
Premiere,
fine.
it works fine.
Okay.
No, Premiere works fine. That's what's weird. Like, why would it not work in QuickTime Pro, but it works in... I don't understand that. Maybe there's a reason for it. Maybe it's a glitch. That was the easy one, because really
Apple
all I
just
needed
needs to allow ProRes on PC.
Now here's the thing. So I got a theory on this, because there's no ProRes on the PC. They've got to get the codec thing worked out, and there's an article called "Why ProRes on Windows is Still Not a Good Option for Editors." There were two different versions of ProRes that you could get on Windows, and that one that was just talked about recently, that just came out, is already not available again. And I don't know
which one. Windows ProRes?
Yeah. So you cannot get ProRes technically on Windows, and even so, it's not true. Technically the same thing.
That's not true. You can get it for Windows. It just costs you like $1,600 to buy one specific program that does a whole bunch of other stuff, but it will also export ProRes.
Right, but is it not the actual ProRes? It's kind of
it's
like
actual
a reverse
ProRes.
engineered version.
It is authorized by Apple.
Is it?
But it's so expensive. It's like, why would you buy that software? I can't even remember what it's called.
Here's my thing. I will swear up and down this is the real reason, is because Apple is scared crapless about the mass exodus of people moving back to PC in this industry, and they know that ProRes is a really, really good codec, and a lot of people are using it. I will purposely go back to my Mac in order to export something ProRes instead of doing it in another codec, and that's why they know if they do it, then that's going to complete the transition for a lot of people, and they're like, no, we're going to try and hold on to these people on purpose. We're not going to release it.
Oh, you know what would be a good service? Export to ProRes. Export to ProRes.com. You upload your entire project file, and then you know...
We get shut down. There'd be some sort of weird clause in the license agreement that doesn't allow us to do that.
No, you're just borrowing the you're just rendering for someone.
Yeah.
Why would that be,
Oh, they'd find a way.
And you'd be doing it on a Mac,
Yeah.
So, I don't know. That'd be
Apple
interesting.
would shut that down. They got to do something for that.
They got enough lawyers.
I don't know though. You're right though. That'd be great. I would use it.
Yeah. Hold on.
Yeah.
What I say? Export to ProRes.com?
Oh, you better get that before we post the show.
Oh yeah.
Is it REZ or RES?
RES,
right? It's S.
Right. All right. Cool. No one's got it.
We'll make our own
I
offshoot.
don't know. I'm not gonna buy it.
Export to halfres.com.
Oh snap!
There's also another good article, and David Ariev a video David Ariev posted this week called "Designing for Entertainment: Industry Workshop" by Mike Hill, and really interesting. It mostly goes over what's the is it not First Contact with Jodie Foster.
Oh, I love that movie.
As
weird as that is, I love that movie.
Yeah.
There's so much done. Like, I remember DVDs were brand spanking new, and this was like the third DVD I owned. I had Twister, and I had Fifth Element, and I had Contact. And Contact had special features. And I was like, ooh, what is this? You don't get that on VHS. And you click and you can actually watch these breakdowns and stuff. And I remember seeing the shot when she runs as a kid to the mirror at the beginning.
Yeah.
And it closes and they're like, no, that was special effects. You're like, how did they do that?
Yes.
And so, there's so much though. Like, I remember, okay, so I was watching this Mike Hill thing, and I wonder if David Ariev agrees with me on this. He's probably yelling back into his iPod.
I don't know. Get him on the show.
His phone right now. Come on,
you guys know
hit him
right?
up. Hit him up while I'm talking, Matt. Let's just get him to get on.
All right.
Ask him to jump into the middle of a show and hit record.
I'm doing it.
Just do it. All right, because the thing about this particular guy who's going off, he is talking about symbolism and design and all of this stuff that is so in depth to me that it is beyond my belief that people could actually think in this fashion, that the reason, and some of it makes sense, but I cannot believe how detailed the planning is that goes into some of this stuff, to where the reason that this person is wearing this particular outfit and is standing in this one particular place is so that it reminds you of this feeling that you have when you saw a Nazi one time, or this crazy stuff, and this is why this chair is designed this way in this film, and I was just dang, that's super detailed, and who comes up with that stuff? These writers, are they really thinking about all that when they're writing? Is it done after the fact? But it's a super long
It's
deal.
a mixture of all of it.
It's really good though. It's really good. It's not just about graphic design or motion graphics, but it will make you think about it, and it will make you think about putting purpose into the things that you are doing when you're designing. Why is this one piece here? Why is this shape here? Is there actually symbolism for it? It really gets you kind of thinking in another direction, especially approaching it at that angle. So, any word from David?
Yeah, he's trying to finish up a couple projects for tomorrow. I told him he was lame and then gave him hugs and kisses.
He's schmoopying it up.
Yeah.
Let's not lie. So, Real quick, dude. I wanted to hit up VR Corner because
Actually, hey, before you do that, I don't know if I did this last week, but I wanted to give a huge shout out again to all of our sponsors at DFWC4D, because I think I might have forgot to last week, and I wanted to say, we had a really, really good time, and thank you to all of our sponsors. We had Grayscale Gorilla, we had iDesign, we had Otoy, we had Pixel Plow. Who am I forgetting? We had Fox and Hound. We gave some stuff away. Dave, who am I missing? I feel like I'm missing someone.
I feel like you are missing.
Oh,
I'm gonna
boy.
have to type it in.
I am forgetting
Maxon,
someone.
obviously.
FWC40.com. Hold on. I'm missing someone.
You forgot and more.
Oh, and more.
Yeah.
Grayscale Gorilla, iDesign. Maxon, of course. Yeah. So thank you guys so much for all the support that you guys have given for our events. So
Yeah.
Sorry.
So quick VR Corner.
VR Corner. Wait, what is it? What's my song? Oh yeah. Welcome to VR Corner. Something like
Is that a
that.
thing?
Yeah, I've done that a couple of times. We haven't done a VR Corner in a while.
Interesting. So
Oh,
question,
and Blasters
first
of the Universe. That's what made me remind
Yeah.
it.
Oh, of course, yes.
Blasters of the
That
Universe.
was the last minute.
That was
That's
why VR Corner reminded me of it. I've been playing that game. It's so much fun.
David, do you have a VR helmet?
I don't.
You don't.
I'm not on the VR kick yet. I've been holding off, but I definitely could jump into that.
So
Dude, they're
this
so
is
cheap now.
Oh yeah, man.
Yeah, I
Oculus
know.
Rift, $399 or something.
Oculus Rift, $400.
I've played with all of them for the
Yeah.
most part, but yeah, just haven't gotten into it yet.
So there's this thing that came out, and I haven't had a chance to sit down with it yet. It's called Gravity Sketch. And people are making these really cool things in Gravity Sketch. And like what I've been seeing lately is that they build and design like these crazy models. It's like more detailed modeling than just some of the more basic programs that are in VR. So
Wow. I'm actually
it's-
looking at it right now. That's
it's
crazy.
really cool. And so what people are doing is they're making these great models in VR, and then they're bringing them into Octane, and they're posting them on the Octane Facebook group.
That's
so
cool.
this is
Dude, this
another
thing also has leap motion integration
Yes, that
for
too.
hand
So you
tracking.
can just
That
use
is
your hands.
crazy.
Yeah, and I don't know how you do it if you like glue the leap motion to the VR helmet.
I think you do.
I don't know how you Velcro. I don't know. But I don't know. I just thought that was interesting. So
That's neat.
yes.
That's it for VR Corner.
That's it for the VR Corner. And okay, we're gonna do something different this time for once.
All right, cool. What are we doing?
We're gonna switch some things up.
All right, let's do it. What are we doing?
We're not doing email last. We're gonna do email first because there's some good topics in here. Then we're gonna come back around to People's People.
Oh yeah, ready.
All right.
All right. I'm gonna let you read the first one then, Matt.
Ooh. Why? Because you don't know how to pronounce the name?
No.
All right. Okay. This email is from Jong Yen. When, whatever. Hey, I had a quick question about employment prospects you guys have come across for this field of work. Is it mainly freelance/VJ stuff, or have you guys had experience with other types of work? Thank you. I couldn't think of many places to research this. So first off, thanks for the question. I actually emailed him back.
Yeah.
A few weeks ago when we got it, and the thing about Cinema 4D, he mentions the VJ stuff, and I think a lot of VJs, I think because Beeple puts out all these VJ clips and you see a lot of VJ people using Cinema 4D, it's kind of like that is, and it's very big in concert visuals and stuff like that. I think because it has such a footprint there, like a lot of people immediately think of it, think of it as Cinema 4D as VJ stuff, but which really isn't the case, because David, you're doing a lot of this like almost photorealistic, like animation stuff, which has nothing to do with VJ clips or anything like that, and then there's David Ariev doing full VFX, stuff. It's really any 3D application or any 3D workflow or 3D stuff that you can do with it. Honestly, Cinema 4D is good for. Is that a good enough assessment?
I mean, I think it sums it up, right? I mean, it's such a diverse tool that I mean, it does VJ stuff really well, right? It does photoreal stuff really well, especially now that it's got all these third-party renders. I mean, it's a great 3D application for designers. I think it's probably the best. I'd go out on a limb and say it's the best 3D application for designers. But it's a 3D animation software as well. It holds up, broadcasts, everything. So all aspects.
This is something interesting because these type of people who write us are not coming from the design world, and they're not coming from the video world. They're coming from this other kind of like Delta side way into this whole thing, just in the same way that the kids that are playing Minecraft are getting interested in Cinema 4D. They're coming in from a completely different angle, and so like it's just interesting to get these types of questions because for one they're kind of hard to answer because it's like, wow, I never thought about that exactly before. A kid comes and it's like, hey, so how do you build something? I'm doing this Minecraft thing and I'm trying to integrate it. I'm like, what? I'm like, I haven't even heard of that before. So it's interesting that we're getting questions like that.
I think it's awesome, right?
Yeah.
It just shows like what kind of a diverse industry we work in, that we can all use this same tool. But one thing we all agree on is that you got to use Redshift. I mean, that's the...
That's funny.
Nuh-uh. Rabble.
Wait, is it? Okay, I forget.
That's funny.
Our friend Nick
Waligorski.
Yes, Nick sent in a question as well. Our friend who we only knew in VR for the longest time until we met him in IRL. And he says, Redshift material convert. What's up, bros? Like a lot of peeps out there, I'm starting to dip my toe into Redshift. Quick question. Do you know if anything, if it has anything like the convert materials in Octane? I have a pretty complex TurboSquid model, and it would be easy to click a button and get partway there at least. And or will I need to rebuild the materials in Redshift?
I'm pretty sure Redshift automatically sees C4D materials, similar to how Octane sees C4D materials.
Yes, it has a node for that.
Yes, there's has an actual C4D shader node.
Yes.
Yes. That's a Rick and Morty joke, David.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Oh, that's why he's not laughing.
I hate not knowing references. It's like it's a character flaw. I got to do that. I always make fun of people. I'm like, you got no references, man. How can I have a joke with you?
Right.
I got to watch Rick and Morty. Gotcha.
Yes.
Well, you've got a whole 24 hours, or probably like almost 36 hours before we get there on Tuesday. It's 3 seasons, like 13 episodes, dude. You could knock it out.
Well,
just don't do anything tomorrow.
It's in the 3rd season. You got Hulu. Get on Hulu and get the first 2 seasons.
You could knock it out probably in like
iTunes.
6 or 7 hours.
Okay.
It's only 20 minutes apiece.
Yeah.
I mean, there's nothing to
cake.
do in Chicago anyway.
Yes.
Nick also says I'm all lined up for half res. Looking forward to seeing you guys again. Also, we are, it would be relatively easy, not easy, but we've been pushing around the idea of maybe doing a material converter ourselves. I'm thinking about that.
Yeah. And actually, during the interview that we just did with Jules,
when we
were talking about the OSL stuff, like what would be really interesting, and even if they don't incorporate it immediately, is being able to find a way where you could like convert whatever material, whether it be Arnold Redshift or any other render engine, directly into OSL. And then convert that into an Orbx file that you could then throw up on a render tokens.
It's going to be all it's all going to be standardized, hopefully, at some point. you know,
You remember that, right, David?
Yeah. I mean, he made a great point.
what, you know, like, it's not going to be what's your flavor anymore because all the flavors are going to be mixed.
Right.
They're going to be the same. It's
Yeah,
like getting
it's
all
gonna
the
be
Skittles, a handful, and just tossing them all in your mouth.
Or getting all the different Cokes and making a suicide. You remember that?
Oh, yeah, suicide.
I never did this. Or like
never
Jungle
did a
Juice, you
suicide?
get all the different alcohol. I never did all the different
Oh
stuff.
man.
Dude, my 21st birthday, like I went out to a bar drinking, of course, like you do, you
Yes.
know. And a guy gave me a shot. He said, "Here, happy 21st birthday." So I took it, and I was like, "Oh, that was terrible. What was it?" He said, "You know, all the liquor that gets caught in the mat. We basically poured the mat into a shot glass." So I was like, "Oh, that's so terrible."
That
It's
could
all
make
right.
me throw up just thinking about it.
The Jaeger kind of overrules all of it anyway.
Right?
Yes,
Yeah, it was terrible.
it's brutal.
Okay, so we got a long email from Sage, but I think this is a cool topic and a bunch of stuff to talk about, especially with the Redshift stuff and everything. And he said, so I haven't sent in a listener email for a while, so I'm sending one now. You don't need to read the whole thing on the show, but if you want to, have at it, so we're going to do it. It'll probably end up being a short email anyway, just like your short shows. So just
Yeah,
wanted
this
to...
is going to be one of the shortest ones we've ever had.
Yeah, right.
I'm looking forward to that.
Yeah, now that we're 2 hours and 15 minutes into it.
So this is just, let's see. Yeah. So just wanted to talk about my experience with Redshift over the past little bit. I only have the demo, so everything I've done has watermarks on it, but I sent to Matt. You guys, one of the more finished scenes that I've worked on. Did you look at that?
It looked really good. It looked really good. It was one of these, it's one of these kiosks that he's working on, and man, it looked clean and very realistic. I was very impressed.
He said it's for sure a nice engine. It's definitely capable of producing a really nice image. I haven't actually tried any of the stuff that Redshift is supposedly really good for, like volumetrics, but from what I've tried, I get why a lot of people are switching. It gives you so much control. It's a bit bewildering, but you guys did a great job of saying all the good things about it, so I won't go over that. I'm just going to touch on a couple of negative points that I think you guys missed that I think may affect some people. Now, I think this is great because, like, I've been messing with things, but I haven't actually built out a scene. So I'm like, you know, I just been going through all the different stuff. Let me try this and this, but I haven't really done a full scene in it. So he said the first, and you guys talked about this for a while, is the nodes. He said, I know people love nodes. I understand why. I just find it cumbersome personally. I think I need more time with it. But needing to put a texture node into a bump node and then into the bump input is way more steps than just dropping it in a channel. I
agree.
honestly think Octane's approach is better, which is a bit layery front end. But if you really want, you can dive into the node editor in the back end and node away. Like now, if you have looked at Cornelius's stuff, you know, and he's showing what he does. Dude, he's all nodes all the time. And I know a lot of people all nodes. We get comments on our YouTube channel that say, I thought Octane was node-based, and you're not really touching the nodes. I'm like, no, I'm just showing you what the different channels, like if you want to go into the nodes, you can. I personally know how to do both. Sometimes I use nodes, sometimes I don't, depending on what I'm doing. Simple stuff, I don't need it. Barton, too. Barton and I were talking about this. He's not a node guy. Like, he does the same thing I do with Octane. I click on things, and I click and click and click into, like, different layers of things. I know in the back of my head, I kind of can visualize what's going on node-wise in the back of my head, but I'm not looking at it visually. So that's a good point. David, are you a node person or a mix or...
I'm a mix as well. I think anymore I'm definitely majority node. I'd say 80% of the time I'm node now. But like, you know, it's nice to not when like all I want to do is like change the color or add like one or two little things. It's like all I want to do is add you know, a display. I don't know. You know, it's when I add one layer of something, I'm like, I don't really feel like going to the node editor and linking these up. All I got to do is load an image in. Why am I wasting my time here?
Right.
So, but for the majority, I think I use the node editor now.
And he says, I also really wish I didn't have to manually add in every input into every node. The Maya Hypershade version of Redshift has all of the inputs on a node already, which makes it much easier for you to learn where everything is. But
I totally agree with that, yeah.
Yeah. This Espresso-ish version, you need to manually add the inputs, and some of them are under sub-menus. Totally. I get that. It just makes sense starting out it just makes starting out feel much more cumbersome than it probably needs to be. I'd also like to stack materials with alpha the way I can with standard Cinema 4D, and now like the UV what is it?
What?
The UVW version of materials in Octane.
Yeah.
Because you can't do it with like cubic and all that. I like putting decals on that way. Maybe there's a special decal thing I'm missing in both Octane and Redshift. There is a decal thing in Redshift, but I find the C4D way to be the best. Yeah, there's like a decal node or decal shader.
I have no idea. That's cool.
I messed with it for like 10 seconds. The second thing that stuck out to me is the lack of in-camera light bloom and flares that you get in Octane. I'd miss it. I'm a pretty plug-in free artist. I don't have Frischluft or RSMB or Andrew Kramer's flares or any of that stuff. So stuff like in-camera depth of field, motion blur, light bloom, I really appreciate. And I know bloom can be cheesy and is often overdone and overused, but when you're already baking in things like motion blur and depth of field, needing to then do an AOV pass to put bloom in post that may not necessarily mesh with those already baked in effects is just another thing that makes it feel cumbersome in comparison to Octane. The last and most important thing, the price. For me, who doesn't like buying plugins, Redshift is expensive.
Quote unquote expensive.
Oh, yes, sorry. That's
important.
Yeah. I'll tell you why. My Octane subscription is only $20 a month. That's $240 a year. That's really hard to argue with. Not only that, I can use it on as many computers as I want, as long as it's not running on another machine. Basically, I can have it on my home machine and on my office machine. Full disclosure, switching Octane licenses from one to the next isn't nearly as seamless as it could be, and can be a pain in the A. or the B, whichever you prefer. But still, I can do it. Redshift is node locked at $500 if I'm reading the website right.
No,
did we get node locked? Which one did we buy?
Okay, so it's node locked, but it's not a big deal. Like, remember the other day when I wanted to borrow your license? Because we bought 2 licenses and I needed to borrow yours, so I just had you deactivate it on your computer and then I activated it on my secondary computer.
Interesting question for you here, because I never talked to you about this. Did you deactivate it?
No, I didn't.
Because I reactivated it on mine.
Oh, really?
And I'm wondering if it automatically shut yours off or not.
It might have. Probably. I don't know. That'd be interesting to check out. I haven't looked.
Single users can't purchase floating licenses. Okay, so I guess we didn't get the floating. Because we only got 2. There's a 5-seat
I did think that was kind of
minimum.
crappy that we couldn't, that you had to get a minimum of 5 before you could get a floating license. Whatever.
Yeah.
It's not too difficult. You just have to deactivate it. But if you're away from your computer or your internet goes down, that could suck.
Right.
They need something like on Octane's website where you can just deactivate it. Of course, I'm down to my last 2, deactivations on Octane's website because it keeps on messing up between my laptop and my regular computer.
Is there a limit to that?
Yeah, it's 5, but then you just have to email them.
Oh, okay. I've never come up across that before. So.
Yeah.
That's kind of a huge turnoff for me wanting to buy it. I have to spend $1,000 to get 2 licenses to be able to work.
No, you wouldn't
use it at work and home. No, you wouldn't.
No.
Even though I'm only using one at a time, as opposed to $250 a year for Octane, it's just more manageable. And I might even get rid of it in favor of going back to C4D's built-in engine with ProRender. Once I really get a chance to test that out, since I've been doing less rendering and more real-time VR. Yeah. Interesting. Finally,
okay.
Podcast topic, and this is one that I'm going to be saving for a couple of weeks from now. Let me tell you, we got a lot of people lined up. We got a lot of stuff going on. Like I said, Cornelius next week, and then Mitch Myers next week.
the week after, and then our
the week
2-year
after.
episode, which is our yearly look into the future.
Jeez. Yeah. And then after that, Penelope. Hopefully,
Eden.
tentative.
Gosh, I messed her name up. Niederlander. She is an artist that we met up with at SIGGRAPH, and she lives in Austin. She's an Austinite, and she recently did the intro graphic for The Tick. So super excited to talk to her about that.
And we haven't worked out the date yet, but Brandon Clements we've been talking to as well, and so many other people. We've got some just amazing people lined up. The reason I was saying that, why was I talking about that? Because in one of these future episodes, not like next week, but coming soon, somebody a long time ago was talking about projection mapping stuff to talk about it, and I have been copying and pasting it into the next episode over and over every week because I haven't really dug into it. He said, I sent Dave an ignored Skype message. Don't worry, you didn't hurt my feelings about it. I want software, hardware, workflows, tips, tricks. If one wanted to try it, how, what to do. I'm a noob. I need help.
Projection mapping
stuff. Like I really have to get this researched and like planned out. And sometimes like we write show notes an hour before the show, and that's not enough time.
Yeah, and now that you've said this part in the email, you never have to repeat it again, so you'll totally forget about it.
Yes.
Right. No, actually, it is pasted into episode 104 right
That's
now.
funny.
104.
David, have you done any projection mapping stuff?
Oh, I've done so much projection mapping stuff.
Really?
Yeah. I got to work with Drake. I did a bunch of projection mapping stuff. Did work with Skrillex. Did projection mapping stuff. And the biggest one was probably Amon Tobin. It's all concert related stuff mostly. And I did that as art director at Leviathan in Chicago, actually. But yeah, I've done it. And honestly, I'm at a point now where I'm like burnt out on projection mapping stuff. And those are just like, I'm just naming, like, I'm name dropping essentially is what I'm doing.
But you got to come up with those
fine.
gimmicks for all the projection. There's always, you got to do, it's got to crumble to pieces, and you know,
everything's
all that.
There's got to be falling balls or
and
something like that.
Outline trace and
macaroni fracture.
Yeah, and it's the same thing, but it's more the fact that it's cool. Don't get me wrong. But it's hard to show in a portfolio. But it's something that's awesome to experience live. But after a while, I'm like, man, I've been doing projection mapping for 3 or 4 years, and I don't really want to show this on my work because like a video of a projection map is like kind of lackluster. You know,
it is hard to do.
And all of a sudden, I'm like, well, I'm focusing all this time on something I don't even want to show. But I think it's super dope to like do projection mapping and the experience of it itself. And I've gotten to go to all their concerts and really like enjoy it. But when I go to see the video, I'm like,
Yeah, we've done a little bit of that, and the videos are just not the same.
Let me ask you a question. Since you're a Florida resident and you and I were talking Disney World earlier.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
What do you think of the new Disney projection mapping stuff? When they got rid of wishes and now they're doing.
He's going to be like,
projection.
I did all that. What are you talking about? You jerk.
I sure hope you didn't. Did you?
No, I didn't.
I mean, it's okay if you did. I mean, because it's still all right. Go ahead.
No, I did hear the podcast where you were talking about your opinion on it. You know, it's one of those things. I would love to know who they hired for it, what kind of budget they had for it, like all that stuff. I would hate to make a judgment on someone and then be like, yeah, dude, like they paid me like next to nothing. I just like put some crap together. Like I would love to know like what resolution like everything's at, like what kind of projector they said they're going to have for it, how many projectors, stuff like that before like, because all that makes such a huge difference. I mean, it could be awesome graphics and then they bought like a crappy projector and it looks terrible up there. It's all pixelated. I mean, I think in passing it looks good. I think if you sit there with an artist's eye, I mean it's really easy to pick it apart. I mean really easy. And I've seen a lot of projection mapping stuff that Disney's done, and I'm like appalled. I'm like, and not to say it's like the artist's fault in case like there's an artist listening. They're like, I did that. No.
Right.
But yeah, the level of detail is just not really there. And whenever they like throw up like some sort of like video on top, I'm like, yikes! Whose decision was that to throw that up there?
Yeah.
But I have a feeling it's coming from client, not from creative. We all know that situation.
Yeah. Cool.
So, did you the Skrillex stuff? Was that the spaceship that Tate made? Did you projection map on that? What were you projection mapping on?
No, it was I forget what tour it was now. He actually during the whole concert he dressed up in a mocap suit, and he was reprojected on a screen behind him, and throughout the concert he transformed from like a skeleton into a zombie.
Wow.
And then he had these like crystal diamond pillars on the left and right side of him. And this was something I did as a part of Leviathan.
So wait, you're saying he had a mocap suit on the whole time?
Yeah.
Yeah,
And
so it was on the fly projection mapping.
Yeah. And so, yeah, exactly. It was really cool. He had a pretty big budget. I got to meet him. I got to go backstage. It was pretty sweet. Super cool guy. Super down to earth guy.
Sounds like a lot of work.
Yeah, we didn't. I think the job that we did at Leviathan was very, very small. It was really cool though. I mean, really the only part I had in it is watching other people work. They were using XSI and doing like fluid liquidy stuff on the beams next to them, and we worked in collaboration with D Squared Labs. And the biggest one that I had the most part in was probably a Montauban. That was cool too. It was a all 3-dimensional stage, and he was in a cube in the middle of this 3-dimensional stage, and the cube was built out of like that glass. It's smart glass, right? Where if you run the electrical current through it, it turns like opaque or whatever, translucent. I don't know which way it goes. And we projected on the whole thing, and it just blew up. And that was like really, really early on in like the 3D projection mapping. Not like let's project on a 3-dimensional surface and like call it a day. It's like no, this was actually mapped to the surface and designed for that surface. But yeah, no, it was at Leviathan. That's pretty much all it did was projection mapping stuff.
I was able to find a video of this motion capture stuff. That's pretty cool.
Yeah, right.
Well, shoot me the link in the dingus, and I'll put it in the show notes.
Now, I'll say this: I had absolutely nothing to do with that part.
When you worked on the Skrillex stuff, were you breaking a sweat?
You know what was funny? The meme that was going around the office was, and you should look this up, or I'll send it to you. It was a meme like GIF of Skrillex and an animated bee. That someone comped in there, and Skrillex is like doing his thing on the turntables and all, and someone put a bee in there like chasing him, and it
I've seen that. I've seen that.
It's so
of like he's
epic.
just like doing his thing, and then it's like,
and there's a bee chasing him. It's fantastic.
That's funny.
That's so funny. Yeah, I've seen
We're
that all
sending
over.
that around.
Okay, hey, Dave, I just posted in there. This is something because Sage was talking so much about Redshift. This is another tutorial that actually Chad and I were talking the other day. He threw this one my way, and it was actually a very, very good Redshift tutorial.
But he was saying 265 instead of 256.
Yeah, it was annoying. The guy kept on saying, all right, now let's throw it up to 265 samples. And it's like, no, dude, that's 256. And you've mispronounced it now 4 times. So anyway, it's all about like sampling and like noise and stuff like that. Now it's specifically for Houdini, but if you've messed around with any of this stuff, you realize it's all similar, you know? So anyway.
Cool. Well, Sage, we're going to...
totally seen that.
Gosh, that's funny. All right. Well, I'll put that in the show notes too. Sage, we will get to that eventually, we promise, and we will see you at Half Res in a couple days, or if you're listening to this afterwards, it was good seeing you at Half Res. Let's go to Paul Gregory, who is asking a question about Luminous, our plugin, and I thought I'd just put this out there. Fairly new to Cinema 4D and Octane, have a lot of experience in Adobe programs, and I've been looking online for programs to make editing easier, and I really like the idea of the Luminous plugin. My question is, I downloaded the Cinema 4D Octane plugin from their website for the $20 a month version subscription, and found I'm unsure if that meets the requirements for the software. This is what I purchased Octane VR for Cinema 4D, and he sent the link. Yes, our plugin does work exactly the same way. We should probably put that on the site. I've got to update it and say that it works with R19 as well. So I will also put Octane VR on there. And then this asshole, locked and loading. Who is that? Hey guys, you had me laughing a couple podcasts ago with the "Just Do It." Maybe we'll repeat it this year at half res, but probably not. Lol. Looking forward to hanging out in a few weeks. Also, been loving listening to your thoughts on Redshift. Keep crushing it. All right.
See, looking forward to your thoughts on Redshift. All about open-mindedness, you know?
Yeah, there we go. All right. Now, back we go.
Oh, gosh.
People. Where'd you get that Greeble? Peoples. What's up with that guy? All right. I'm not going to sing that ever again on the show. People, I didn't sing it. Was it David who was like, "You didn't sing it"? I was like, I don't like singing it.
I liked when you guys paused and like you did it in harmony. That was nice.
Oh man, you know what? I never went back and listened to that.
It came out pretty good.
Did it?
Well, because like
It was
you guys
slightly off,
each
but
muted each other or turned down the volume and then sung at the same time, right? Oh man, that was so funny.
Yeah. All right. So let's pull up our web browsers. Let's open our Microsoft Edges. Just kidding. And oh gosh, she always posts a new one right while we're doing the show. All right, well we'll look at that next week. All right, if you are following along at home, we're going to start. We're going to work it the right way. We're going to start and go back. We're going to do 3 of them tonight. We're going to start at if you're following along at home, September 5th, year of our Lord 2017. We're going to go to Gothenburg, which is Gothenburg. Gothenburg. Now, the first thing I got to say about this is it's very pretty. I think Beeple's traveling the world right now, so he's getting inspired. You know, love this the pink orb thing going on here. I'd also like to add in that we've been talking about the fact that, you know, some of these dystopian things were going on. They had these road signs that were for speed limits of like kilometers, you know. And so this to me looks like this is actually a prequel to what was going on in the future. And I can tell this is the future right before the apocalypse happened because
of the big pink orb.
Well, that and maybe this is the beginning. Maybe this thing approached and then it's kind of like this is what started it all. But I can tell it's the future because these trains have no tracks. I don't see a
Way to go, people.
I don't see a track. But
they're all hover trains.
They're riding low. Maybe they're just like from the West Coast, you know?
Right?
Riding dirty.
Yes.
No, riding dirty is when you don't have your inspection or your registration.
I thought that's when you have a gun in the car.
Oh, is it?
And you're drunk and high or something.
Well,
can we get some Urban Dictionary?
That might have been an awkward conversation with the police.
I'm sorry,
I'm
sir.
just riding dirty.
I'm riding dirty. Gonna catch me riding dirty. All right. I like the grain in this. I like the buildings, and I'm very interested in whether or not he's got stock buildings or if he's building these, not stock, but stuff he's built before. Because it was interesting to kind of see some of the stuff that he's been showing off with building like facades of buildings, and also if you've watched Cornelius's tutorial, I mean it's just kind of early. I'm thinking people are just now getting into that, but it's interesting to see how he builds facades of buildings. Because honestly, I'm kind of like, oh, I'm going to build this scene and I'm just going to make a giant cube for a building, and then I'm going to build out these pieces of it. But like the way that I've been seeing people lately build these facades is like just doing polygons and like not even building the backs of the buildings. It's interesting to see the different way that people approach these things. Doing
like the movie theater set ones.
Movie
theater set buildings.
Exactly. So that's interesting to see. I do like the idea of like this is the beginning of that right there, And David,
Yeah,
I got to
maybe.
get your opinion on this.
Yeah, I mean,
Because Matt's
I'm
not
looking
going to chime in, he's whatever.
Yes.
No, I
He's
mean,
anti.
I had my, I don't know. This one's pretty good. It's not my
pretty good, I
favorite
guess.
of the three. That, of course, I can't find the other one. Someone's yelling at me to just go on his Twitter.
You always go on Twitter, man.
I go on his Tumblr.
This was a whole entire conversation between me, you, David, and EJ this week over group text. Is where to find the correct canonical Beeple post. What is the definitive, absolute
Yeah.
Beeple?
I don't know. I hopped on Instagram, and when you said the name of it, I just kept clicking until I came across the name.
Yeah, there you go.
For me.
But sometimes some of them don't show things, and I don't know if maybe he posts it all on Twitter and then it posts to his Instagram or vice versa.
Right.
But they don't always appear everywhere.
No. I think he posted Twitter is the most accurate one from what I've seen, and then sometimes his Instagram ones will be 2 hours apart from each other. They're not it's not every day. I've seen a couple of them recently, and there's only 3 hour difference from post.
I think maybe he's trying to tell a different story on Instagram. He's leaving parts of it out on purpose.
So I'm looking at the Gothenburg, right? And that pink orb in the background. I mean, is that the moon or is that the sun? I don't know, but it's definitely not on this planet because isn't the light that comes off based on the atmosphere of that planet?
Yeah, but it's in front of the building.
It's in front of the building.
Is it in front?
Yeah.
It's in
look at
between, right?
Yeah, it's
there's a
straight
whole
up
row.
there.
Yeah, that's
See,
interesting.
here's what I think. So we've been talking about this dystopian world, right? Where they're trying to, at least my theory is that, they're on Mars or on the moon or something like that, and they're trying to, whatchamacallit.
In the other ones, not in this, but yeah.
Right, in the other ones. I'm just continuing this story.
Yes.
Where, so this is part of the regeneration of the Earth. I think maybe this helps create oxygen or whatever, or helps them survive, or keeps the warmth during the night. That's what it is. Because nights on Mars are very cold, so this keeps the warmth around for the cities and stuff. And so you need a big orb like that in order to keep it very warm.
I like that idea. I actually think, though, that it is what powers the train. Because look, the only other pink illumination is on the train.
Or is that a reflection?
Right? No, that's actually okay.
There's
so
illuminated
those little
panels.
pink things,
Yeah.
that is where normally that would be the sign of what city or what drop off you're going to.
They're
Right?
Exactly.
They're going
They
into
are actually driving into the pink.
Oh, I see. It's like a cult thing.
I don't know.
They're
about
all
that.
leaving the planet.
Aren't they
All right.
all kind of cult-ish?
Yeah, that's true. That's true. See, we tied it together. All right, this is not in the show notes, but I've
Figured it out.
completely forgot, and I think we need to address this because this one is a completely different change for Beeple, and this one is September 6th, if you're following along at home. What's called 100% chance of rain. And not only is this awesome because it's a bunch of fish underwater, which is totally different from anything he's been doing, but I like the thought about the terraforming stuff and the 100% chance of rain and when we finally get the clouds going on the moon and Mars.
Yeah.
And
all we've brought are fish from Finding Dory,
right, because you put
Finding
them in
Nemo.
the ocean
Yes.
and you're getting
Right.
the oxygen and plants going and you're finding
Right,
Dory.
because fish cause oxygen in the ocean, right?
No, but they eat the plants and then they fart out the plants and then the plants regrow and put the oxygen back into the water and it goes in the air. So this is on the moon.
I think your oxygen cycle is a little off.
I don't see Dory though. I see Nemo.
Dory's totally there.
Where's Dory?
Oh, I maybe. Is that Dory? I don't know if that's Dory.
I don't know.
I see Nemo.
There's lots of Nemos.
I found Nemo.
Yeah, Nemo's in there. And
You don't need
Nemo's
to be
dad
finding
and-
Nemo. I found him. Her. Him.
Him.
I like this because I also see that this is also building that harmony. Look at all these different species of fish all getting along together. You know, there's a school of fish that are all different types of fish. You know, this planet is about harmony.
Mm-hmm.
And they're in motion. It's a school of motion, if you will.
Oh gosh.
Oh.
Oh my. Okay,
All right,
let's
what
okay.
else?
We're not going to do this one, but I do want to mention also a different offshoot is the Europa that he did on September 7th. That's really cool. Completely different take, and I'm liking these.
I don't know.
These
I'm
different...
feeling like that is very similar to all these. He's been putting these squares in lately, and I feel like, you know, maybe this one was just like it feels like a tapestry, you know, almost like a tapestry that you would see on a wall, hung from a wall, or like a rug, you know. I don't know.
So if you're following along at home, September 8th, Makeshift Home.
This one's
is
very pretty.
Very
this one was
cool.
my favorite of all of them.
The week, yeah.
Yeah.
Number
it's
one.
very Beeple-esque.
It is.
Very Greeple people.
It is Greeble Beeple.
Where'd he get those Greebles?
Where'd he get those Greebles?
Just don't know.
Did he use that
What's up with this
JS
guy?
plugin?
What is up with this guy?
What's up with this guy?
See, there is a guy in there.
Yeah.
But that's the joke. So, okay, number one, I have to comment on the name because it says Makeshift Home, and so I got to go directly to this, which is this is part of the vehicle that is allowing them to get to the other planets. This is their makeshift home on the way to wherever they're going to terraform. And
Okay, do you think that those greebles are actually like containers containing like
People.
all the bodies and like people and
the
like
Beeples people.
Oh,
So we've got
Those-
what's up with that guy, the Greebles, and the Beeples people in this. This is like the de facto.
Yeah, it sums it all up.
Yeah.
I see this as
way
like,
to take a beautiful piece of art.
This is I
why I
love this
don't
render
love
though. This
People's
render's
people.
fantastic.
Yeah.
I feel anyway, we love you people. It's all in fun.
He knows that. You're so like you think we're gonna upset him, but
No, I know
Yeah,
that like
this
he
is
doesn't
fantastic. People are nerding out about his work and like coming up with stories about something that he probably doesn't even have a story about it.
course
This would
not.
be fantastic. This is this is awesome.
we know for sure he's gonna be like, I don't effing know what
know.
it is. GD it. But graphic vector, is this what you would call that? Graphic vector?
What
A graphic vector?
is it? I don't
Yes,
know.
where you don't actually see. Well, you kind of do see it, but the graphic vector is where like it's the 1 point perspective, where the line,
the first point. Oh, yeah, the 1 point perspective.
where the
I really
lines
love
are
that.
all going in a diagonal. I think that's called a graphic vector, if I'm not mistaken. It's been a long time.
David, you're the graphic designer. You tell us.
Yeah,
I don't know of that, so I'll just go with what you guys say.
okay, I would do.
I think it's
graphic
just
vector.
1 point
That's
perspective. I think
Yeah,
that's the.
It
I would
is.
go back to more classical, 1 point perspective, but graphic vector, I like that.
I'm gonna have to look that up now. So you guys. The problem is now you type in graphic vector and you get like actual vector images.
Vectors, that's what I would think.
So vector graphics is the use of polygons, blah blah blah. Vector graphics. See, graphic vector. See, I like that's such an old term. It's so hard to find now because you're talking about vector
We'll
art.
put it in quotes.
Yeah, I just did. Man, it's gonna be hard to find. That's a really old school reference. But when I was in whatchamacallit, high school.
That was a long time ago.
Yes, I was taught that the diagonal lines going toward that point in the 1 point perspective. That's what that was. So, anyway,
They might have taught you wrong.
no, wrong. Okay,
right.
so let's talk about this from the actual technical perspective. What do you think? Octane, obviously.
Yeah, a cube with a greeble. He took one of his guys, and then he just did 4 cubes with different lights. Honestly, like super cake.
I like the.
It's beautiful. Don't get me wrong, but I bet you it was pretty easy.
Do you think that the light itself is emission texture coming off of that itself, or do you think he lit that separately?
I don't know. That's a good question. I think it's emission texture, I would like to say. But you know what? Now that I'm looking at it, like these greebles aren't like they're not really greebles.
Yeah, that's true. They're maybe it's half greeble, half model.
Maybe
there could be some octane scatter going on for sure.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking.
That's what I think it is, right? I think it's just octane scatter of some geometry.
Yeah, because there's the repeats, and the way that octane scatter works is you can just put like a whole bunch of stuff under it, and it randomizes all of it.
And you can throw a random effector on it too.
Yeah. It's pretty.
I really like that piece. I think you're right. I think it's the best one of the week. Last of all, if you are following along at home, September 9th, Super Wong. Heart. It says, super inspired by the amazing Liam Wong.
Have you seen Liam Wong's stuff?
Yeah.
It's incredible.
Yes.
It's epic.
Yeah.
This is the what would you call them? Like the alleyways. And now
I mean his stuff is just gorgeous.
Yeah. I've always wanted to do one of these little alleyway things because they look real. They just, I know everybody's doing them, but they just look fun to make.
Yeah, they really do.
Lots of air conditioning units and neon and there's always a cat in there for some reason. But yeah, really cool. If I flip back to this here, the thing that I noticed, number one, is
that the bike is intersecting the ground.
Ooh.
Detail. Oh, yeah,
well,
you're right.
Now that's because the bike has been there so long that they actually laid the cement. Or, there's no track, so nobody drove it in there by accident. But they laid the cement down around it. It was just there.
Or actually, it could just be a statue.
It's a statue. Could be a
statue.
No, that's what it is. Beeple makes no mistake. There is a reason for it.
For sure.
Don't you question, Matt. Don't you question the Beeple. Don't question Bruce Dickinson.
We won't stand for it.
This aggression will not stand, man. Okay, the sign. I really like the sign. That's pretty cool. With the like little blocky stuff. They're both of the signs. Interesting, the textures on the side of the walls. What he's got going on there, and like the reflections. And I'm wondering if that's if there's any displacement going on there, or bump, or if it's just a plain texture.
I think it's definitely it's separate. You can see on the left that one like pink light that's coming on one of them. It kind of curves around where like that brick is being exposed underneath, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I think it's definitely a little displacement there. I really like the attention to the wire detail, and this is something I feel like I would miss. Is that I'd probably just make all the wires the same width or something. But he's got that one wire that's different kind of width than the other ones, and they're twisted around. Just like those little things that kind of sell you on it.
And there's a lot of that that Cornelius goes into in his tutorial too, about doing wires and pipes and stuff. It's really interesting. And then anything else in here we want to talk about? There's a van down there at the end.
Yeah. That guy, that Beeple is probably picking up some drugs or something from that van. Or, I don't know, it's, I don't know, I don't want to make stereotypes.
He's going to return some videotapes.
Right.
But this is definitely different because it is in an Asian country. And it's not like in Europe.
You don't know that. You don't know that. Well, it could be like,
North Korea took over. That's what happened.
No.
Oh.
It could be like Chinatown or something like that.
That's true. It could be Washington D.C.
Right, exactly. Like that never. That car could be full of cats that they're using for
Oh, so it's food delivery.
Right.
Okay. I told you there's always cats. That's why.
Right.
Yeah, there's always a cat. That's where they're at. They're in the van.
Interesting. Like, I'm looking at this at the side here. There is an orange glow coming from under, like, the top set of stairs. I can't figure out what it's supposed to be. Maybe there's a sign behind it. Is that what that
Maybe
is?
you just wanted to see the stairs better. That's what I would
we
think.
haven't really tied this into the regular narrative, but it is interesting.
No, there is no regular narrative with this. This is an offshoot because it is an inspiration piece.
Subplot. That's true.
Oh, yeah.
That's true.
It's an easy out.
Now that cement, that could still be some wet cement. It looks wet. It could be
Yes.
that it was fresh and it's been. I mean, look, it kind of looks like there's footprints in it.
Yeah.
So we think the guy's stuck then? Could the guy be
he
stuck
got
in wet
stuck
cement?
on the bike, and he was like, "Oh man, I got to get out of here." And he's walking away from his stuck bike.
Let's walk towards this
Van with the
van.
cats in it.
Yeah. So, because that's his delivery bike to deliver the food,
Yep.
the cooked cat.
And he had to call the other people and be like, "Hey, dude, I got stuck in cement. Come and pick me up." Or he's like, "Oh, there's my Uber." All right, can we go on?
Alternate
Are we
title,
done?
catatonic.
Are we done with this?
Yeah, we're done. We're done.
All right, thank goodness.
All right. We're going to get out of here.
Yay!
We're going to get out of here. David,
Mr.
thank you.
Brodeur, thank you for being
Yes.
on the show.
Oh, man. It was a blast, guys.
I feel like we didn't talk about enough. Like, I really feel like before the show when we were waiting to get recording, I feel like that was the real thing. That was the real juice of it. And I feel like I wish you guys could have heard that.
Yeah. Well, you know what that means? We got to do it again.
Totally.
And, let's hang out at half res. Let's figure some stuff out, and let's come back again. Let's get David Ariev away from Schmoopy. And
that would be a great Octane show for sure.
Yeah.
And let's do it. Let's make it a great open-minded show about all the different. We didn't even mention cycles, you know.
Yeah. You know what we need to do? Here's what we need to do. We need to get a roundtable discussion. And Dave and I will moderate it, right? And we'll get like a couple of big, Octane users. We'll get you and David.
Get Hupkey in there for cycles.
Hupkey in there for cycles. We'll get Chad for either Redshift or Arnold, or we could get Chad and Trevor Kerr in there for like Arnold. Oh man, that would be
and we'll give everybody a different weapon. Fight!
to the death. Whoever wins,
Round
that's the
one.
render engine of choice.
No,
Only
I
one
love this.
will win.
Let's spark this energy and let's get other people chatting about this too, and not have it all pigeonholed to one opinion.
Yeah.
Let's get everyone opening up about this. Don't be shy.
Totally.
I mean, until the
great.
end. I mean, it'll be like that Anchorman fight scene, That escalated.
Oh,
Wow, that
seems
escalated
so
quickly.
good.
Yeah.
Yes.
There can be only one.
Where'd you get a grenade?
Oh,
You know what we could
you
do?
might want to lay low for a while.
Take all your dreams and let's do it.
On that note, we're going to get out of here. You can rate us on iTunes, leave a review. You can subscribe to us on iTunes, too. It helps get our ratings up. Or do we have any new reviews? Come on, people.
I'm going to check.
Let's
do
do
we
it.
have any?
Let's do it. Like I said, like David said. Newsletter. We got the newsletter. Sweet newsletter. You can get that on the site. You subscribe to that. We promise we don't do it that often. You can say you've been there, done that. Got the T-shirt with the No Brograph, No Mograph T. That's our classic shirt with the Gate de Simone
classic.
limited edition shirt. And
Quote, unquote.
winter is coming. We have to come up
Ow.
with the sweatshirt, the Don't
like
Track Me Bro T-shirt.
I don't like that one.
We'll
I think
sweatshirt.
maybe,
We'll come up with a
maybe
sweatshirt.
we'll do a People's People shirt.
Yes. I don't know. Is there some sort of intellectual property agreement we have to? I mean, we definitely. Oh, we already talked about that. We have to. That's where Beeple's People came from. It's the charity organization, and so we got to get
really?
Beeple's
I don't
People's
remember
charity
that.
organization set up first
Okay.
before we do the shirts, and we have to have him select what charity it's going to go to.
Oh, okay. Okay, that's pretty good. I like that.
Yeah, so we can
And
say.
so what is it? Just like, well, we should have him design the shirt.
Yeah, but he's got to
With one of
do
his
a different
people.
shirt every day. That's the problem. It's going to be really tough.
Oh man, that like kind of like a Woot type thing, right?
Every day, it's the daily he did the day before. That would be somebody's full-time freaking job, let me tell you.
Oh my gosh.
But we got to come up with something, something that, I don't know. We're going to stew on that for a little bit. Come up with a cool
How about
gimmick
just a shirt that says Matt hates Beeple's people?
No, because that means you hate the charity, and that's not cool, dog.
Oh, that's not nice.
That's not true.
Very nice. We also have the Paul Babb Feel the Bab 2020 t-shirt, which all the profits for that one go to Doctors Without Borders as an actual real charity at this point.
Not a fake one like Beeple's people.
Yeah, it's not real yet. We'll get there. I don't know. I mean, we could go so many angles. It could have his daily on it. It could have a picture of him on it.
Oh my gosh, Beeple's face
with this
right
tie.
Here, with his tie, saying, "I don't know."
I don't know. Or no, I think it could be his tie and his, khakis and shirt or something.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. We got to figure something out that's a good gimmick, but it will definitely be like a real charity once we get down to it. So we'll keep thinking about it.
David, what are your thoughts?
Yeah.
Well, let's see what you guys come up with. I think I'll buy a Beeple's People shirt. That's for sure.
All right,
I support the cause.
All right.
Nice.
Even with a fake charity, I'll buy the shirt. I did buy one of Beeple's real shirts too, and they're awesome.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Nice.
All right. Well, we're gonna take off. You'll see it in a couple days, and we'll see everybody else there. Gosh, this is gonna be so much fun. Can't wait.
Oh, it's gonna be a blast.
It really is.
We're on Facebook again, and Twitter, Instagram, of course, YouTube, and Brograph.com. And that about wraps it up. Until next time, I am Dave.
I'm Matt.
I am Dave.
Have a good one.
Later, bros.
See you guys.
It's pretty good, I guess. Brograph.com, an online resource for learning critical components of Cinema 4D and After Effects, specifically catered to help you prevail as a motion graphic designer.
What's up, bros? Welcome to another Brograph motion graphics tutorial.
We give you professional time-saving tips, shortcuts, and lessons that help give you an edge over your fellow designers. Not only this, but our new Brograph Talks help you in your file management, hardware configuration, and client relations.
I love projects that scare me. When our art director comes to us and asks for something that I had never done before, man, it gets me pumped.
Join us for live sessions, check out our crazy Cinema 4D experiments, or just watch our Fun with Brograph series, where we show you practical applications for techniques learned in previous tutorials. Do this from the beginning, and your client is going to respect that, and they're going to respect you, and they're going to respect your time. Subscribe today and get automatic updates on the latest tutorials, tricks, tips, and inspiration brought to you by industry professionals Dave Koss and Matt Milstead, all with a slight dash of dry humor peppered in. Real nice banana.
Brograph.com, your source for tutorials that will help you thrive in the motion graphics industry. Don't just play around with Cinema 4D and After Effects, master it, and make money by becoming indispensable at your workplace.
We don't care how you get here, folks. Just get here. Subscribe now to Brograph Tutorials. It's pretty good, I guess.